16th meeting of the East Hampton Town Board, live streamed over LTV. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Councilwoman Burke Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilman Lease.
Present.
Councilwoman Overby.
Here.
Councilman Bragman.
Here.
Supervisor Van Scoyac.
Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, we have a full agenda. We'll have a public portion where any member of the public may address us with any questions and concerns. There's call-in number on the screen. We'll take you in the order that you call and ask for your patience as we work through the callers. Also, we'll have a number of topics, which will start off with the 2020 Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee's recommendations regarding requests for applications. Chris Clapp and Melissa Winslow will present that. We have a Sag Harbor Stormwater Abatement funding recommendation, again by those same two individuals. We'll have a Human Services budget request by Diane Patrizio. Army Corps of Engineers Lake Montauk Harbor navigation improvements presented by Brian Frank, John Jelnicki, and Kim Shaw. And then we have PR firm recommendations, enhanced community communication, Sylvia Overby and Kathy Burke Gonzalez, followed by Wainscott Green discussion with Jeff Bragman, followed by liaison reports and resolutions. And before we get started, I just want to make a few comments about where we are regarding COVID. The numbers continue to decrease throughout the region. We expect to reach phase 3 by June 24th and potentially phase 4 reopening by July 8th. Of all the tests given on June 13th, only 1% of the 4,243 tests given were positive. Only 44 tests out of that number were positive. The hospitalization rates continue to decline throughout the region, and new admissions to hospitals for COVID in the entire region were only 13. So that's out of 3 million people in the Long Island region, Nassau, Suffolk, only 13 admitted to hospitals. These are all very encouraging signs, and we will attribute that to the way in which our communities have pulled together at this time and followed the public health guidance that we've been reiterating throughout this period of time. We heard the governor on Sunday make a comment about people not obeying and that there were businesses opening and not complying, and that he was going to take action if the local municipalities did not take action. He talked about the problems in New York City with over 12,000 complaints, and he mentioned a place called the Hamptons. And I think that was a very unfortunate comment because, first of all, lumping all of the South Fork into this mythical place called the Hamptons, I think is unfortunate. We're all individual communities with our own histories and attributes, and we've all been working very hard to make sure that businesses, as they reopen, are in compliance, and that the general public understands what the health protocols are. And frankly, we only had 2 complaints over the weekend called into the police or to my office, and they both related to unfounded complaints. One was about a yoga gathering that was properly distanced and in compliance with the governor's rules. And the other complaint was about people gathering the green in Amagansett. And that turned out to be families who had gotten takeout food and were in their own individual groups gathering, sitting on the lawn, again, in compliance with the guidance of health professionals and the governor's own guidance. There was quite a bit of surprise among the local supervisors and law enforcement. This is not something we saw, and we've asked the state to give us examples of what they were exactly talking about. So far, none is forthcoming. In any case, I think we need to move on from that. We are working constructively with the New York State Department of Transportation. We received the guidance, and application was finalized on Thursday of last week. We received an application to apply for expansion of outdoor dining onto the state right-of-ways, which in the hamlets of Amagansett and Montauk extend all the way up to the very front of the buildings. That application was finalized and sent off yesterday, so we turned that around immediately. We think that it's important to continue to offer outdoor dining throughout the town as expeditiously as possible. As of Wednesday, outdoor dining was allowed to begin within private properties, and the town acted quickly to make sure that those businesses understood what was required and that they were in compliance. We've had a lot of enforcement personnel, both the fire marshals and code enforcement, visiting all of those businesses, making sure that they had their applications and that they were complying with the guidance. And we've had a very good response and a lot of cooperation. Business owners need to be reopening as soon as possible, and but they also need to do so in a safe way. In speaking with various business groups and owners, they understand the importance of keeping themselves safe, their employees safe, and their patrons safe. None of us want to go back to a shelter in place. We've all sacrificed a great deal to get us to this point. We need to be mindful and cognizant of the ongoing health risk, and that's why we're continuing to tell the public to wear masks and socially distance as much as possible as we reopen. It's really great to see that we're getting to a point where the governor's just announced for us here on Long Island that in phase 3, we may resume low-risk outdoor youth sports such as baseball, softball, gymnastics, field hockey, cross country, and crew. We'll be monitoring that as well. I think we have some town recreation programs that will probably start opening up again when that phase 3 begins. We're on track for phase 3 again on June 24th. I think we're in really good shape. Day camps will be open too. There was an announcement that no sleepaway camps will be permitted to operate this summer. That determination's been made. But again, we appreciate the public's cooperation and patience as we move back towards our new normal. At this time, I'd like to go to public comment. And Michael, do we have any callers on the line?
There are currently no callers on the line.
Okay, so we'll move on with our topics, but I'll check in with you from time to time to see if anyone has called in.
Yes.
And we'll try to fit in callers at any time during the meeting that we can. So today, again, we'll start off with the 2020 Water Quality Technical Committee's review of the requests for applications and those recommendations. And the chair is Chris Clapp, and our own Melissa Winslow and Natural Resources will be presenting. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you. So I have a presentation I can pull up.
Some very clean water there, Chris, and it's behind you.
Got to remind everybody why we're doing this, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very appropriate virtual background. Or is it virtual?
Fisher's Island. That's about 20 feet of water there.
That is clear.
Yeah.
So I'm Melissa Winslow. I'm a senior environmental analyst in the Natural Resources Department. And I'm here with Chris Clapp, who's the chair of the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee. So we're here today to present on the Water Quality Committee's recommendations for the 2020 grant funding. So just an overview of what the process was. So the Water Quality Committee developed this process of requests for applications to allow for a more efficient and standardized process to review and prioritize water quality improvement projects for funding. So we issued this first round in January of this year, and it was due in on March 20th. Total available funding was $1.25 million from the CPF Water Quality Fund. So we received a total of 12 applications. The town had developed a subcommittee to conduct an internal review of all the applications. We then met with the Water Quality Committee via Zoom to hold a special meeting to review and approve complete applications in April 2020. There were a few applications that we thought were well put together, but we needed a little bit more detail. So we requested additional information for 4 different applications, and we held a second review meeting in June. So we received 12 applications, 8 were deemed complete and approved by the Water Quality Committee, and those are the projects that we'll be recommending today. And then 4 other projects were not approved by the Water Quality Committee. So this is just an overview of all the applications that were submitted. We had 2 commercial innovative alternative septic systems that came in, 51 South Edgemere in Montauk, right on Fort Pond, and Gardner's Marina on 3 Mile Harbor. We had 1 library, Montauk Library, total of 4 not-for-profits, 2 of which were churches. So we had Sag Harbor Christ Episcopal Church and Wainscott Chapel via the Wainscott Sewing Society. Whalebone Village Affordable Housing also submitted an application. We had the Village of Sag Harbor, who submitted an application for a sewer master plan to upgrade and use the excess capacity of the existing sewage treatment plant in Sag Harbor. The Surfrider Foundation submitted an application for a non-point source pollution abatement project of a bioswale on Methodist Lane in the village of East Hampton. And then the 4 projects that we will not be recommending for funding today are Montauk Shores, who submitted for commercial trailer park sewage treatment plant upgrade from their existing system. Wainscott Pond project, which was for a permeable reactive barrier and dredging in Wainscott Pond. Cornell Cooperative Extension for a Gracilaria bioextraction grow out in 3 Mile Harbor, basically using long lines of Gracilaria that was grown in a lab and harvested to remove nitrogen from the water body. And then also similarly, SUNY Stony Brook submitted an application for kelp grow out in 3 Mile Harbor, also using basically the same techniques. So those projects lacked longevity and weren't selected for funding for this round. Chris is going to get into a little bit more detail on those projects that we're going to be recommending a little bit later. So the total request for funding was around $4.4 million, and we're recommending for award today a little over $1.14 million. I showed this last year when we did the request for applications, but just to show how we were scoring these different projects and how the committee reviewed and ranked the projects. Priority for funding, we required certain criteria based on the water quality law. So we weren't able to approve projects that didn't meet these criteria. So that included having a measurable water quality improvement, the duration of the benefits exceeding 5 years, so the longevity of the project, an approved project type in the water quality improvement plan. So it either has to be a wastewater treatment project, non-point source pollution, aquatic habitat restoration, or pollution prevention in order to be funded. We also looked at the project needed to be voluntary. So if it was required by local, county, or state law by a mandate, it wouldn't be eligible for funding. Demonstrated technology, we required property owner commitment to make sure that the project would actually move forward. And then project feasibility. Once the project met all the mandatory criteria, we scored them based on water quality improvement. So the significance of the impact, targeting a priority water body and priority pollutants. We looked at cost factors and we stressed the need for detailed estimates. Project readiness and goals, so meeting local, county, and regional goals was important. And then maintenance and monitoring in place to ensure the longevity of the project. So these were, the total score was out of 100. So just to review, this was actually presented to the town board in January before the RFA was issued. But this basically details how much funding would be available for septic upgrades for different uses. This is to incentivize larger scale projects that may not otherwise upgrade to put in better technology or nitrogen reducing systems otherwise without this funding. So we prioritize projects that were located in the water protection district, higher flows or larger sources, known contributions to water bodies, and failed systems. Basically, we're looking for the biggest bang for the buck here. We prioritize source reduction projects in this round. So this basically details septic upgrades as the biggest contributor. And we actually did an outreach to some of the larger sources in impacted water bodies. So South 3 Mile Harbor, Fort Pond, and South Lake Montauk. So just to run through these really quick. For municipal properties, so mostly town and village owned properties. This could be parks, recreational facilities, police, EMS, and comfort stations. Those are able to be funded up to 100% design and installation. Publicly accessible spaces, so not-for-profit meeting spaces, religious centers, libraries, schools, fire districts. That's also up to 100% design and installation, given adequate justification. Existing multifamily and high-density residences. So this is affordable housing and senior housing. Those can be funded up to 100% for the design and install as well. Condominiums, townhouses, homeowners associations, and trailer parks. Design wouldn't be included, but the cost would be normalized for a single family home flow for the installation costs. So that's based on the average flow for a single family home of 440 gallons per day. Traditional commercial properties or for-profit enterprises. So this would include retail, offices, restaurants, prioritizing system failures and voluntary upgrades. We would fund up to 65% of just the installation costs for properties within the water protection district, and then 50% of the installation costs for all other areas. And this would be capped at $200,000 for commercial properties. Sewage treatment districts are to be determined, and then warehouse and industrial properties, since they generally have low flow, possibly just one bathroom, those would be available for application to just the rebate program that the town is offering. So now I'm going to hand it off to Chris Clapp, who's the chair of our committee, and he's going to run through each of the recommendations for 2020 funding through the RFA.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. And as you'll see here, the projects that we received and the projects that were selected, the targeted outreach and the revised funding tiers seem to work, at least for this year. So first off, we're going to go through the two commercial systems, the first of which is 51 South Edgemere in Montauk. They're looking to, or they need to get below 10 milligram per liter nitrogen output, utilizing 4 FujiClean systems. These are all source reduction of the pollutant of concern. So we expect to see a drastic reduction in nitrogen and pathogens from this facility. It's located in the Fort Pond Water Protection District, and their existing flow is 6,780 gallons per day, and their proposed flow is just under that at 6,705 gallons per day. They got a score of 83 out of 100 on the initial screening, and their total project cost is $526,000, which avails them to the maximum calculation of $200,000. Within that $526,000, they had several ineligible costs, design, expediting, grease traps. So even with those costs removed, and even at 65% of those approved costs, they still we're above the $200,000 maximum. So at this point, the advisory committee recommends an award of $200,000 to 51 South Edgemere Street.
Okay.
On the next slide, you will see a layout of the project. So here you have Fort Pond on the left-hand side of the screen, South Edgemere Street, and the property in question there highlighted in blue.
So essentially it would occur within their parking lot.
It's almost entirely, so if you see the schematic, I know these schematics are hard to see, and I'm trying to move my mouse around, but you can see right off the, it's landward of the water body, so it's in the parking lot side. Everything will have to be load rated and done underneath their parking lot.
Great, thanks.
Chris, can you tell me if they're have an updated site plan and C of O for this piece of property? For 51?
I believe that is one of the screening criteria that they had used, and that kind of comes up a little bit later. That if they have outlying violations of their site plan, then they typically get kicked out. And Melissa, do you want to chime in on that?
Yes,
how that gets filtered?
We looked into the property cards and, open building permits if there were any, site plan for all the projects that came in.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Before we move on to the next application, I'd like to take a caller. We have someone on the line for public comment.
Okay.
So we'll just pause the presentation for a moment and move to the caller. Michael, is the caller still on the line?
Hello, caller. You are live with the town board. Could you please state your name? Hello, caller. Are you there? You're live with the town board of East Hampton.
I think you're going to have to ask them to turn off their television and spin.
Hello, caller. If you're there, please turn down your phone. Are you able to speak? Hearing nothing, Supervisor. It's your decision if you want to move forward. I can try them again if you'd like.
Yeah, what I would like to say at this point, if you're calling in for public comment, you will need to turn off the sound to your television or any other device where you might be listening to today's meeting. Otherwise, there is a feedback loop. We won't be able to hear your comments and we won't be able to have that conversation. So if the caller would like to call back at this time, let's move on with the next application.
Thank you. The next application was Gardener's Marina on 3 Mile Harbor. Again, they are looking to upgrade to a low nitrogen system using a series of FujiClean units. This project is proposed to have a source load reduction of nitrogen and most likely pathogens as well. As I mentioned, located in the Water Protection District of 3 Mile Harbor. Their existing flow of 642 gallons per day will only slightly increase to 677 gallons per day. They have an allowable density on the lot of 1,654 gallons per day. So they're still, this is not a density enhancing project. They're just utilizing their existing flow. They scored a little bit higher even than the previous project at 97 out of 100, a total project cost of $120,000. Their award calculation was $58,760, which is the 65% of allowable costs. So we pulled out the grease trap, the engineering, the general contractor, and their agents and surveys. So this was strictly for the installation costs only. With those costs removed. The Water Quality Advisory Committee recommends an award of $58,760 to Gardeners Marina. And the next slide will show the layout of this. So here on 3 Mile Harbor Road, as you go down 3 Mile Harbor Road, you'll see the hedgerow, and there's a small building behind that hedgerow, which is where the facility to be upgraded is. And the diagram, I'm sorry, like all your faces are on top of, I gotta remove this, or on top of the diagram. And you'll see there the existing facility, the treatment unit, and the series of leaching galleys. And they also have to install a retaining wall to get the proper fill in, so that proper separation to groundwater.
You can see the very close proximity here to 3 Mile Harbor, and this is at the head of the harbor, and just in the southern part of that photograph along the road is the town bulkhead that extends down, which is currently being replaced, and I think that work will be completed soon. The town slips are in that section as well. Thank you.
Okay, on to the library, and after the library, we'll go through the non-for-profits. The Montauk Library, looking to upgrade their sanitary system. Again, a series of Fuji Clean systems. They requested for the design or the engineering and installation of the system. They looking to reduce their nutrient loads, their nitrogen loads, and falls within the water protection district of the Fort Pond watershed. They're also adjacent to the wetlands in Fort Pond. So their actual flow is just over 1,000 gallons per day, which is underneath their allowable lot density of 1,548 gallons per day. So this one, again, had a really high score of 92 out of 100. Their total project cost of $174,041.56 is all allowable costs under our new guidelines, which allow us to pay for design, engineering, and installation on municipal and non-for-profit properties. Their approved costs are slightly lower to $126,262. They had a general contractor and some contingency in their budget, which we had to pull out. And then so the committee recommends to the town board an award of $126,262 to the Montauk Library. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the Montauk Library. Again, I apologize, I'm trying to use my mouse here. But just to the south of the property, you see Montauk Highway. Actually, could you go back, Melissa,
Sure.
to the map? As you come up out of town, the Montauk Library is on your left-hand side there, and Fort Pond just to the west. And the schematic for the proposed plans has the treatment system going off to the north with the leaching area behind that. Any questions? Okay. Sag Harbor Episcopal Church, again, another source reduction project. Proposing against these Fuji Clean systems with leaching galleys. Let me get rid of this screen. So as a non-for-profit, again, they are eligible for 100% of the design, engineering, and installation costs. They are looking to reduce their nitrogen loads to Sag Harbor Bay. As you know, church provides many services to the community. and they are adding a privately funded kitchen and bathroom. Their anticipated flow is 3,500 gallons per day. This will get refined with further engineering. And their total score slightly higher than the library at 94 out of 100. A total project cost of 143,830, and a funding request of 143,830. All costs within this request are eligible. Therefore, the committee recommends the town board award $143,830 to the Sag Harbor Episcopal Church. As you come down Division Street or 114 in Sag Harbor, the church is on your left-hand side, just before you get to the school there, or next to Maristella School, and the just north or south of Sag Harbor Bay. And the schematic, don't have that one. No, good because they don't have engineering yet. Mm-hmm. Right, we're providing engineering fees. Similar to the church is the Wainscott Sewing Society at the Wainscott Chapel. Again, they're looking to upgrade a conventional system, or actually, I believe a cesspool to a low nitrogen septic system. They're requesting engineering, excavation, and installation of that site. Again, looking to reduce their nitrogen loads, and they are located within the Wainscott Water Protection District, or Wainscott Pond Water Protection District. Their anticipated flow of 405.6 gallons per day, and they are actually exempt from Article 6, which I don't quite understand how, but they are. And they received almost a perfect score of 99 out of 100. They have a total project cost of $41,665. They have a $5,000 pledge from the Friends of Georgia Pond. So their total request is $36,655. Under our new rules for non-for-profits, and this allows them to get that full funding of $36,655. As such, the advisory committee recommends the town board award $36,655 to the Wainscott Sewing Society for Wainscott Chapel. Okay, for those of you familiar with the site. And their sanitary system will be located on the northwest corner of the structure, which is the back of the building, at the leaching galleys behind that on the north side of the property.
That is a welcome change. It's a pretty primitive system there in the chapel.
Having been there, I could vouch for that. I believe it. Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Historic.
Yes, historic is the nicer way of putting it.
It's old school, literally old school.
Old school. Okay, happy to see this one finally come back again. Whalebone Village. This was one of our first applicants to the program when we got started a few years ago. Looking to upgrade their low nitrogen to a low nitrogen wastewater treatment system for the affordable housing complex. They are proposing a series of Arenco Max systems, and they estimate they're going to remove just under 1,000 pounds of nitrogen per year at this site alone. And they are within the South 3 Mile Harbor Water Protection District. This is a project that's been a long time coming, and really excited to see this over the finish line. Their design flow of 9,750 gallons per day treats all of the existing flow on the site. Again, a high score of 95 out of 100. And their total project cost of $375,000. Again, with our new rules on affordable housing, existing affordable housing, that full request is allowable. And therefore, the committee recommends to the town board an award of $375,000 to Whalebone Village. And I believe we have engineering diagrams. This is really busy. If there's lots of questions here, I don't blame you. But it's the treatment is primarily in the northwest corner of the property. And I believe this is a custom-built treatment unit, similar to the custom-built treatment unit in Southampton at Mashut County Beach. And finally, the village of Sag Harbor, their sewer treatment master plan, they're looking to take advantage of their excess capacity of about 100,000 gallons per day. They feel that this they could expand the service area of the district to include 300 existing homes within the primarily the shoreline areas along either Sag Harbor Cove on the Southampton side or Sag Harbor Bay on the East Hampton side. They're pursuing funds from both the Town of East Hampton and Town of Southampton water quality advisory committees. So this is strictly looking to remove some of these older homes with cesspools in the higher density areas that are really difficult to do on-site IA systems. Scored relatively high, 86 out of 100. And this is for planning, $144,800 for planning, proposing a 50-50 cost share with Town of Southampton. So therefore, their request of $72,400.
That last line shouldn't be in there.
No, I was going to say that is not part of this. So therefore, the advisory committee recommends to the town board the award of $72,400 to the village of Sag Harbor for their sewer master plan.
So there are no BMATs plans for
No.
educational science. Okay.
The amount of times we looked through this and didn't.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny how that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and as you all know, the treatment facility is on Bay Street, next to the Sag Harbor Yacht Yard, and they are looking to. That's the existing service area, and they are looking to hook up additional homes in the higher density areas adjacent to the shoreline. Or at least that's what we're hoping the plan will show us. Okay, enough with wastewater for the moment. On to a application by the Surfrider Foundation for a bioswale installation on Methodist Lane in the village of East Hampton. They are looking to capture suspended solids and nutrients and pathogens before it moves on to Hook Pond. They're using best management practices identified in New York State Stormwater Management Manual to do so. And the long-term maintenance will be by East Hampton Village and LVIS. So good opportunity for education and outreach, hoping to get some signage and make the connection between where our water goes and how to better treat it. They plan garden tours of the site, and their score of 93 out of 100 actually scores fairly well, pretty high for most stormwater projects. Their total project cost of $201,587.95. Their grant request was $129,218.65. And the award recommended by the committee is $127,468.65. This, unfortunately, under the law, outreach and education materials are not allowed. So those funds will have to come out of either from Surfrider or from other streams. But it would be great to have some signage at the site. The committee recommends the town board award $127,468.65 to Surfrider for the Methodist Lane bioswale. And we have a schematic. We have so we have the site here on Methodist Lane and as it currently exists. And then I believe we have a schematic of the proposed bioswale after implementation. So in total, the recommendation awards for this year are $1,140,375.65.
And that completes the presentation. If the town board has any questions.
Well, I think at this point, I don't have any questions. Do other board members have questions? I have a few comments.
I just was curious, generally speaking, for those folks that didn't get 100% of the funding that they asked for, are they going to be moving forward with their projects?
Yes, most of the costs that were disallowed would basically need to be their buy-in because the CPF just can't fund those costs.
Mm-hmm.
But with the bulk of the costs being, awarded through CPF water quality, we think that it's enough of an incentive to ensure that the projects will move forward.
That's great. And thank you. I mean, this has been a very methodical approach that you've taken and very easy to follow. And I appreciate all the work that you and the committee have done, Melissa and Chris.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, this really is a rigorous, application and review process. I think it instills a lot of confidence that the projects that get to this stage will have significant improvements in water quality and align very well with the regulations and rules regarding the expenditure of CPF funds for water quality projects. Again, in any given year, 20% of the previous year's revenues for CPF can be attributed to water quality projects like these, and the application process that's been developed and the requests for applications, I guess goes out twice a year now. We're doing this twice a year, Melissa?
The first round for 2020. We were actually just discussing earlier today about the second round. It'll likely be less funding available, and we'd like to announce that either the end of this week or early July.
Do you happen to know what the total water quality fund expenditures could be in this year?
For the entire year, I believe it's around
20%.
I think it's around
It's been as high as
5.8 million.
Yeah,
it's over 5 million this year. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But we have a good portion of that dedicated to the septic incentive program that we're giving out to residential homeowners. Commercial homeowners or commercial owners are also eligible for those funds. And then we have some ongoing town projects, water quality projects that we're funding as well.
Great. Thanks so much. So I have.
If you guys don't, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wonder if I have a couple of questions on here, or just comments about the project. I echo exactly what Kathy and Peter have been saying about the whole entire process for vetting of these applications. And I think being this the second round right now, the applications are coming in with much more detail right now, which I think what makes it easier. I look forward to seeing every round moving forward right now. I think the water quality in the town of East Hampton is only going to benefit from how coordinated this effort is. Specifically on 51 Edgemere, Montauk, I'm supportive of that. It's one of the highest flow rates that we have on Fort Pond. very similar to the Surf Lodge that upgraded their septic system recently then too. It takes one of the largest flow rates there, because that's also not just a restaurant, but that's a hotel, and assists with decreasing the nitrogen for the Fort Pond, which it's beneficial. I think there's almost 49 galleys I counted on there. It's a very large project, and I look forward to seeing that go in. Gardner's Marina, I had a couple questions on there. I support it also. It's at the head of the harbor. It's a little bit of a stagnant area of water then too. I'm happy that the owners are doing so. You said this will add a cost for GC and agent. What I saw all these applications coming in. Why do we take out general contracting and agent costs specifically? And was the agent on this one different than normal?
Specifically for commercials, as part of that funding tier that we presented to the town board, commercial properties are really only eligible for installation costs only. So that would be the system, the excavation, any of the components required for the system itself, but not for engineering design, any oversight costs, things like that. For some of the other projects that GC costs were disallowed, I mean, for a lot of, especially for slightly smaller systems, the committee didn't feel that a GC cost was required for the installation of the system to actually get all the pieces together. It's not a necessary cost. So if they mentioned on this one,
sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry.
I apologize.
If they choose to go that route with the GC, the committee just saw that it would be their buy-in to do so.
And specifically on this one, you said they were requesting a grease trap. Does that mean that they're looking to expand it to a restaurant at a potential time? Is that something that we look favorably on?
I think for Gardner's Marina, I don't think there was a grease trap. I think that was just the general contracting cost.
Okay, and the agent on this one, I think specifically was the owner on there.
Yes.
So sometimes that you know, the owner has to take care of that cost, but I'm happy to move that forward. The Montauk Library. With the Montauk Library, I think this is a great project for the public, and specifically since they're going through their capital expansion, to have the construction costs decreased overall for all the taxpayers, to do it at one time instead of ripping up the whole infrastructure again to install an IA system. I think the timing of this is probably one of the best timing projects that we have as far as what the taxpayers are putting into the library district, but also what the taxpayers are now putting into the septic system there. So I'm in a big favor of that project.
Can I just jump in here for a minute? And
sure.
I guess what I'd like to do is, because we have such a large agenda today, I'd like to try and keep this moving forward. I wonder if there are any specific concerns or questions that anyone has about any of these recommendations, and if we can sort of get an idea as to whether or not board members support them all, or if there's some that they'd like to hold off on.
Well, I support them all. I think they're all very valid on there. I think they're all going to be great educational aspects to each one. I specifically really support the Wainscott Chapel, and then also the bioswale. I think those are going to have a lot of good education and input into the community. So I appreciate them coming forward. So
I'm in agreement with David. I think all of these are really outstanding projects that will lead to improved water quality, and are in fact the reason that we have this CPF Water Quality Fund and this process set up to make sure that projects are in alignment with the improvements. So I'm supportive of all of them. Most of these I've seen before, and they've been being developed over a period of time. So that's my thought on them.
All right, and I would just say that I support the recommendation of the committee, and I believe we should move forward with funding all 8 projects.
I support all the projects as well. I'm happy to see this. They're important projects. They're going to make a big difference in our water quality, and I like the process very much, because it's clear and the criteria are easy to understand, and it's a good way to run a comparison among the projects. So I'm very happy with these.
I want to support the project and also thank Melissa and Chris. I think their presentation today was very clear and gives us the background that we need in order to move forward with these projects. So thank you.
Well, that's great. It seems like the town board's unanimous in supporting the recommendations, and I want to thank the committee for the hours and hours of work and careful study and in moving us forward in these water quality projects. So I appreciate you taking the time. At this point, we have a couple of callers, I think, on the line. I'd like to go to the callers.
Mr. Supervisor, could I add one last comment?
Sure, of course, Chris.
I just want to recognize the Councilwoman Burke Gonzalez and Councilman Liss for their support and help in helping us, get the criteria and the tiering structures ironed out so that applicants knew what they were applying for and they knew what they were eligible for. I think it added clarity to the applicants, and it added clarity in the presentation here as to how the funding awards were made or recommended rather. And it really did come down to creating a process that makes sense and that is transparent and replicable. By prioritizing and doing outreach to the areas we knew we wanted to get the most improvements in, and to allowing the added flexibility for the non-for-profits and the affordable housing, also helped get a bunch of projects that probably never would have happened had we had stuck to our old, our first year's allocation equations. And so we continue to iterate, but I think that for the moment we have something that is working, and we look to replicate that in the future, do the targeted outreach, and continue the additional funding for those types of projects that couldn't get off the ground without the additional funding.
Well, thank you, Chris. Again, thank you for all your work and the committee's work, and appreciate you pointing out the hard work of the council people. Kathy Burke Gonzalez and David Lease on this effort. I do think the processes are really well laid out, easy to understand and supportable. So at this point, again, we have a couple callers, I think, on the line. I'd like to get the public comment. So Michael, if you could cue the callers at this point.
Yes, one moment. Caller, you're live with the Town Board of East Hampton. Can you please mute your microphone in the background and state your name?
Lenny Falls.
Hi, Lenny. Good morning,
Hi.
Lenny. Can you mute your television, please?
Can I what?
Your television? Can you mute the sound on your television? Otherwise, we'll have a feedback loop.
Oh. I don't know if I can.
If you could kindly just turn your television off, that would be great.
1 minute. Okay.
Hi, Lenny. How are you today?
Hi. Hanging in. Thank you for the job you're all doing. I was curious as to why Amagansett is the only hamlet in East Hampton and I think Southampton that doesn't have a food pantry anymore. Did all the churches there refuse it, or?
No, it's combined. I know that.
Yeah, it's called East Hampton now, I know.
Yes,
but
correct.
We never had a food pantry, and we probably wouldn't have one. So I was wondering why Amagansett doesn't have one anymore.
I believe they decided to combine with the East Hampton and make it one food pantry that serves that entire area.
But how come Amagansett as an entity doesn't have it?
Vicki Littman, who lives in Amagansett, Elaine Jones's daughter, and they've for
I
years
know that.
provided.
And they decided it? I don't think so.
My point was that she is, I believe she's the president of the East Hampton Food Pantry. So I don't know the history of why Amagansett doesn't have their own food pantry, but I do know.
Well, maybe David Lees could answer the question.
But I do know that the East Hampton Food Pantry does serve Amagansett residents. So there's not a gap in coverage.
I understand that, but we never had a food pantry for East Hampton because East Hampton town is very small and to some degree wealthy. So my question is, why isn't there a food pantry in Amagansett as a hamlet, the way the other hamlet in Southampton and East Hampton?
Well, there isn't a Wainscott food pantry either, as far as I'm aware.
Well,
and
they probably don't need it either. I mean, you know, it's a wealthier area. But Amagansett had it for years, and I don't know what effort was put in to continuing it and why it wasn't accomplished. There are several churches there. I know
something
didn't work out at the...
I don't know the answer as to why Amagansett doesn't have their own food pantry, but what I do know is that there is no gap of service where if there are residents in need in Amagansett, that they could participate in any of the other food pantries within the town. So
but why doesn't Amagansett have one?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I just don't know.
Well, what about David Lee?
Do any of the other board members know why Amagansett doesn't have their own food pantry? I don't think.
Isn't he Amagansett?
Well, specifically, since you're asking me, if you go to the easthamptonfoodpantry.org website, it says our mission as a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, the East Hampton Food Pantry mission is to eliminate hunger in East Hampton one meal at a time. Our goal is to raise awareness for food donations, maintain a center of reflection storage and food distribution, and encourage support, financial and hands-on, from individuals, businesses, fraternal, philanthropic organizations, religious institutes, and more. Anyone having any trouble obtaining food or feed themselves or their families eligible, we provide food and more in East Hampton on site at the East Hampton High School and our Amagansett satellite. So I would probably contact them. I don't know if that's an outdated website. I know that they do actually participate.
Did you approach all the churches in Amagansett?
I'm just finishing answering your question to the best of my knowledge. If you'd like to contact them for more information on that, their number is 631-324-2300. That's the best information I have for you.
Lenny, we appreciate you taking the time to call us today.
I don't understand.
Okay, well, we don't have an answer for you, but we don't have an answer for you. We appreciate you taking the time to call. If any of us find out why,
but it is the only hamlet that does not have a food pantry in East Hampton or Southampton. So I don't understand why the church or someone else.
There is a food pantry in Wainscott. It's the Hampton's Church Food Pantry, and it operates out of the Living Water Church. It's a small food pantry, but there is one over on Industrial.
But it's not named after the hamlet.
No, it's not.
So, I mean, if you're asking why there isn't
a
food
pantry in
Amagansett
many years.
The hamlet, I don't know why there isn't one, but the East Hampton Food Pantry serves Amagansett, so there is coverage.
Well, I think that's a slight on Amagansett for not continuing a food pantry and having all the holiday celebrated with the liquor store. That's the most expensive liquor store in probably East Hampton. And,
Lenny, I thank you for calling.
I don't know why they do that.
Yeah, I thank you for calling. I don't think we're going to be able to answer your question today, though.
Well, David
So
Lees
again,
hasn't
thanks
said
for calling.
anything.
I'd like to move on to the next caller. We have another caller on the line.
I'm sure you would. Okay. But it's a sore subject. Thank you.
Thanks for calling, Lenny.
Mr. Supervisor, there are no more callers actually at this time.
Okay, let's move on with our next agenda item, which is the Sag Harbor Stormwater Abatement Funding Recommendation. And again, we have a Chris Platt from the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee and our own Melissa Winslow from Natural Resources.
So I'm going to be leading this one. It will hopefully be a much quicker presentation than the last one. So this is for the Sag Harbor Stormwater Projects recommendation from the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee. Just a little bit of an overview. The Village of Sag Harbor put forth 10 projects to the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee. These were all included in the CPF Water Quality Improvement Plan. They're adopted as part of the town plan. So these were not applied through the RFA since these were already approved. The Water Quality Committee reviewed and approved 4 projects in 2018. These are all ongoing right now. So these were permeable pavement along Bay Street in 2 locations, rain gardens in Marine Park, and then rain gardens in the road right-of-ways along Terry Drive in the Azarest community. So EH1, 2, and 5, which are the permeable pavement projects on Bay Street and rain gardens in Marine Park, should be installed in fall of this year. We actually had it out to bid before the COVID-19 situation, so we put it on hold, and we'd like to get that up and moving again very soon, and with the goal of installation in the fall. So these are really all have the goal to implement demonstration projects in Sag Harbor in visible areas. They're all going to be educational outreach opportunities. All projects include a monitoring component to make sure that they're efficient and have a measurable water quality improvement. And we're coming before you today because the Village of Sag Harbor has secured 2 grants for 2 of their other projects in the plan that the committee was kind of waiting to move forward to make sure that the 4 priority projects that they selected are underway, which they are. So the committee today is recommending moving forward with 2 other projects, which are EH7 and 7A, which are rain gardens along Bay Street, and then EH9, which is rain gardens right in front of Havens Beach. So the first one, 7 and 7A, these are 12 rain gardens along the road right-of-way along Bay Street with the goal to reduce the direct runoff of stormwater and non-point source pollution into Sag Harbor Bay. And they basically are designed and located in a way to have the largest impact and capture the largest amount of water possible to reduce flooding and prevent nutrients, pathogens, and other pollutants from entering the bay. These also incorporate community involvement by getting the homeowners involved and the community involved. The watershed area for basically the catchment area for these rain gardens is 1.66 acres. Nelson, Pope, and Voorhees, which is the firm that's developed these projects for Sag Harbor, estimated the pollutant reduction load of 37.5 pounds of total nitrogen per year, 5 pounds of total phosphorus per year, 1,440 pounds of total suspended solids per year. So this is suspended sediment from getting into the bay, and then 1,577 billion coliform forming units of bacteria per year. So the total cost for the project is $164,260. The Village of Sag Harbor acquired a 0.25% grant from the county, their WQPRP grant of $82,130, which requires a 50% match. So we're requesting funding for this project for $82,130. Basically, the committee feels that these were projects that we want to move forward. They were already approved, but the timing is right based on the additional funding outside of CPF that's available. So just to kind of show you where the conceptual design, where these rain gardens are proposed along Bay Street. There's a total of 12. There's 8 depicted here. And basically, these could be subject to change based on the education and outreach that Nelson Pope and Voorhees does with the community. But the design would be as such to capture rain gardens by placing them appropriately and sizing them appropriately. And then these are the other 4 just farther down. These ones are right before the Havens Beach Road access. The other project is EH9, which is rain gardens along the roadway for Havens Beach. Again, to capture stormwater running along the roadway to prevent runoff and pollutants from getting into the bay. They're also proposing a series of French drains along the roadway, basically to collect the water and discharge it into the rain garden for treatment. They would be designed to capture the 1.2-inch 24-hour rain event. And pollutant reduction load estimates a little bit lower, but it's also a smaller area. 7.6 pounds of total nitrogen, 0.8 pounds of total phosphorus per year, and then 460 pounds of suspended solids per year. So the village received a grant from Peconic Estuary Program for this one. For the design and construction, they received $30,000 from PEP. The total project cost is $47,000. I believe these costs were a little bit elevated because they needed to use prevailing wage for the funding source, as it's federal funding. So the Village of Sag Harbor is requesting the remaining costs to move the project forward of $17,000 to get this project going. And this is an updated diagram from Nelson Pope and Voorhees of where the rain gardens are located along the roadway. And then you can see basically on either side of the road leading up to the rain garden is the French drains. And I have a little bit of a zoom in here. This is just showing conceptual design for both the rain gardens there. They have a pretty detailed planting plan. The design is as such to capture and treat the maximum amount of stormwater possible, but also to look beautiful. They have flowering plants in there and different seasonal varieties. So it looks good pretty much all year round.
It's not really apparent from the photographs, but all these projects are down gradient from rather densely developed areas, most of which are on septic systems. And this is especially near the swale at Havens Beach. There's been an ongoing issue with pollutants getting into the bay. So again, this is a great area to be concentrating on to improve water quality.
Exactly. Thank you. So as part of the project, just to make sure that this is lasting success, there is outreach and management involved. So the Village of Sag Harbor will inspect them annually to make sure that they're being maintained. The maintenance will be provided by the village for the first 2 years. And they plan to launch a sponsor of rain garden program, especially for the road right-of-way projects that are in front of homes, where the homeowner would be responsible for the care of the rain garden. And then the village would still inspect the rain garden to make sure it's still being maintained. And if it's not, have corrective action for that and make sure that they take it over. So just to wrap up, these 2 projects in the Village of Sag Harbor, they're very interested in moving these forward, and the committee felt that it was a good time to do so with the grant awards that they received. So for EH7 and 7A, recommending award of $82,130, and EH9, $17,000. and they're proposing monitoring to include baseline and performance water testing to ensure that these are effective and in improving water quality, and then that the maintenance and management will be included to ensure the longevity of the project.
Are there any questions for Melissa on these projects?
No.
No, I like the projects also. The biggest discussion I think I've always had was about the maintenance of our rain gardens, knowing that they're going to be going in more often in other locations in the township, just that they stay maintained so there's no silt built up in them and that they work efficiently. So if we continue that outreach there and try to get the buy-in from the neighbors, I think that's going to assist in the longevity of these projects then too. That's always been my concern.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I support the village's request for these projects. I'm pleased to see that they were able to get Peconic Estuary Program funding as well as Suffolk County. I think that's terrific. And again, you know, the eastern half of Sag Harbor is within East Hampton Township, and that's why they're eligible for these requests. And the village does contribute to our CPF, our Community Preservation Fund. When there's a transfer of property, 2% of that sale goes into the town's CPF fund. So I definitely support both these projects. Other board members have comments before we move on? Okay, thank you so much, Melissa. We appreciate the work that you and Chris have put in here on these important projects.
Great, thank you so much.
We'll now move on to Human Services budget request, and we have Diane Patrizio, our Director of Human Services, here to run us through the request. And before we get started, Diane, I just want to say that, you know, ever since since before the pandemic broke out, but especially since the pandemic broke out, and the outreach of our Human Services Department has been really outstanding. And I just want to thank you and all your employees for ensuring that our seniors, you know, were well cared for and that they had contact with people checking in on them. I know you guys were even calling folks up on their birthdays to wish them happy birthday and to make sure that they had meals, producing just hundreds and hundreds of frozen meals, you know, at a time when it was really unsafe for seniors to be out shopping. You provided those services for them. I just been so impressed with you and your staff at this time. And I know Kathy Burke-Gonzalez has worked hand in hand with you throughout this time to ensure that you've had what you need. And we know that there's huge demand. So we understand why the budget request is being made. The cost of food and provisions has increased. The availability of food and provisions, you know, was problematic at times, but you came through. So we're here to discuss providing additional financial assistance in the form of budget modifications and budget requests. So I'll just let you take it away from there.
I feel like you did it for me, Peter.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan, so you know you don't have to make the case too hard, but maybe you can get into some of the specifics that you're asking for and why.
Okay, as Peter said, my name is Diane Patrizio. I'm the Director of Human Services, and it's really been my honor and pleasure to work with the entire staff here. They're very devoted, and we get the job done. We've continued operating and serving seniors even after the center was closed on March 10th. And while the doors were closed, the need for healthy nutrition meals has increased. And in order to meet the demand, funds are needed for the Senior Nutrition Program food line. So we did think of adding some money in 2020, and we added $15,000 to our budget line, increasing it from 70 to 85. And we were doing that to address the increased food costs and also to add some additional food items, you know, different diets, vegetarian, but our planning didn't include dealing with the pandemic. So if you compare the total clients that we served in 2019 from January until May, to the clients that we've served from January till May in 2020, it's increased from 166 seniors to 354. Now, besides serving more seniors, the other variable is that in the past, when we had the congregate meal program, clients would attend a few days a week. Not everyone came every day. So, but now we're providing every senior 5 meals a week. So in 2019, we served a total of 18,633 meals. And in the past 5 months of 2020, we're already at 15,720. In addition to that, in addition to the increased demands for meals, food costs have increased. And in some cases, vendors are unable to even keep their items at the same price that they listed on their bids. There's been a great increase in produce costs, and our produce quotes are obtained on a weekly basis, and our meat quotes are obtained on a 3-month period. But due to the increasing cost to the vendors, many times they're not able to honor those quotes. So we do have POs done till the end of June, but we're projecting in order to do the next quarter, July through September, we're going to require additional funds of $70,000. And it's my recommendation that we just deal with that quarter and then revisit it again in September and see where we're at. And the budget director, Len Bernard, has recommended that the $70,000 be transferred from surplus. I'm also requesting some additional budget modifications, but these don't require any additional funds because they're just moving from one budget line to another. I also just want to take this opportunity to thank the following businesses and individuals for their generous donations: Camp Blue Bay Girl Scout Camp, L&W Market, Amber Waves, the Bridgehampton Food Pantry, Share the Harvest. Laura and Wayne Carr made a personal donation, and Hampton Bagels and Breadzilla. They help us out to allow us to give some additional special items. And I want to thank you all for your consideration on behalf of our program. Any questions?
Thank you, Diane. Board members have any comments or questions for Diane?
No, it's obvious that the need is there. We've doubled the number of folks that we're serving. This has been, a lifeline for many folks, not only because they didn't want to go out and these meals were delivered to their home by our senior transportation folks, but also for some who are living, on Social Security, and the cost of everything else is going up. So, this has been, this is a tremendous program, and I'm so proud of our community for stepping up the way we do. I will have a budget modification on for Thursday night for $70,000, transferring the money from surplus. And having discussed it with Len, rather than putting it into the same food nutrition line, we are going to create a separate line that is food COVID-19 so that we can keep track of it. But, as Diane said, we started the year with $85,000. I think we've spent, through all the money that's been encumbered on purchase orders through the end of June, I think we've spent $82,000. I mean, that's how, how much money, because of the cost of food, because we are providing, besides the frozen meals, there is fresh fruit that go in the bags to the seniors. We're getting donations of bread. We are, putting in tea bags and some oatmeal for breakfast. But, but these meals are well balanced. The seniors are getting salads as well as entrees and vegetables and dessert. And I think it's something that we want to continue. And I hope the board will support the resolution on Thursday.
Well, it is appropriate to use the money from surplus. The reason that we maintain surplus in town funds is for a situation like this. It's been a fairly significant amount that we've been able to end up with in our surplus funds. And I think we always thought that we'd be using them in a time of crisis that would be related to a hurricane, not a pandemic. But you know, we have those funds available. I think, as Kathy said and Diane said, we're going to need to be able to provide these sort of services, I think, for the foreseeable future. And I support that additional expense and look forward to that resolution on Thursday, Kathy.
Yeah, I also support this, Kathy. Diane, I thank you very much for the breakout, the cost analysis breakdown that you did. Makes it very easy to understand. And I think it's very wise to put it into a COVID food line to see what the reimbursements might be out there at a future time. This is something that we have to continue to do. And I think Peter is exactly correct. This is why we have surplus and we get a good balanced budget.
I support and want to thank Diane in particular and her whole staff who've done just an incredible job during, and when we think about it, you know, you were just literally thrown into this. No warning, no understanding of what this was going to mean to the community and to your staff. And just thank you so much for doing it. And Kathy, you've stayed on top of it the entire time, as well as food pantries, to help the community, and just appreciate the work that both of you have done.
Well, I have to say, Sylvia, you nailed it, because as Diane will attest, in the beginning, you know, it was quite a learning curve, and, you know, how this all works, and, you know, how the deliveries work, and the whole schedule, and having it make sense when we got up to over 300 seniors receiving, you know, 5 meals every week. You know, right, Diane? Having they've spread out in the center, even just packing the meals for, you know, for 1,500 meals that go out in a week. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
You know,
there've been a tremendous number of challenges caused by the pandemic, and we've all been, you know, forced to come up with new plans and to adapt. And I just think that I'll just add on to Kathy's praise. I think your department's really done a stellar job adapting under what have been really difficult circumstances. And, you know, now we're kind of coming out the other side of the risk of infection threat is going down significantly, but the need in the community is not. And that will be with us for a while yet. So we need to continue to work to heal our community in that way until people get back on their feet and we gain some normalcy.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, what's happened with this pandemic, not just Diane's department, but all of the departments, you know, that it gives pivot. You know, we always say that, oh, we'll just pivot and we'll be able to do this. And it gives it a whole new meaning, because it wasn't just pivoting, it was changing our life and changing our lifestyle. And I know it's hard for everybody that's out there. But, you know, and I just appreciate all of our departments that have been able to work on this and do it effectively.
Diane, I just want to add a thank you as well for the work that you've done. I know, you know, I've been watching it and it's been great. And I also note your ability to coordinate with other community groups like East End Cares, which has been really, I think, energized our response basically, and made us more effective. So
absolutely,
I'm well aware of it and much appreciative.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. Keep up the great work, and give our very best and thanks to your staff.
Absolutely, I think they're all watching. So
oh, great. Good job, guys and gals. Terrific. So we have next up a discussion of the Army Corps of Engineers Lake Montauk Harbor navigational improvements. And this is something that we've been in discussion with the Corps about for a number of years. I believe we have Brian Frank from the Planning Department, or Senior Environmental Planner, here with us with the presentation, the most recently updated presentation from the Army Corps. This is something we've reviewed and talked about in the past, but I think we're at a point now where they have their final plan. I'll kick it over to you, Brian, to run through the basic background and give us the finer points of what's changed since the last submission that we received. Are you there with us, Brian?
Mr. Supervisor, he's actually in the process of joining us. He's not on at the moment.
Okay. Well, in that case, I guess I'll give a little bit more background on this project. I think the screen is viewable by the public. We talked about enhancing the navigation in Montauk Harbor. The entrance to the inlet has a design depth of 12 feet, and that was at low tide. There has been continual shoaling within the navigational channel, and at sometimes it's required emergency dredging. I believe the last emergency dredging was in November of 2018. The dredge spoil in the past has been placed on the western side of the jetty here, where you see the green. And part of the issue here is that the navigational channel, given the size of vessels, the fishing boats that come in and out of the harbor, and on the various conditions, sea conditions, and tide levels, they may have to wait offshore until the tide gets to a point where the conditions calm to a point where they can make a run through the inlet. When they're heavily laden with a catch, and it's crucial that they get the catch to market as soon as possible, as it really impacts the price of the catch as well in many cases. This has been an ongoing problem, and it's a safety issue as well. There have been cases of boats coming in heavily laden, getting stuck on the shoal, and in a bad sea condition, it can be quite hazardous coming through that narrow stretch between wind and tide. It can be quite treacherous. So this is a multi-pronged sort of project. It would enhance the depth of the dredging within that blue area, and would mean that the design depth would be increased significantly to allow for heavier draft, deeper draft vessels. The other side benefit would be that the sand that's within that area could be placed on the western side of the jetty, which would result in some sand remaining for public recreation in an area that's has a really high energy zone when we get nor'easters and whatnot. And there are a lot of shoreside bulkheads and whatnot, erosion prevention structures that have been placed there every year.
Thanks.
So, Brian, do we have you on the line?
I think you do now, Peter.
Okay, great. Then I can just turn it over to you because I'm running out of things to say.
Yeah, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I didn't realize it. Well, anyway.
So I don't know if you heard my introduction, basically talking about the enhanced inlet. Maybe you could go over some of the particulars. I believe the design depth currently is 12 feet. That's being extended to 19 feet, I believe.
It's being extended to 17 feet.
17 with the 2-foot overcut, which. 19.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. If you recall, board members, we had discussed the inlet redesign, the improved navigation, back in September, when the Corps really took a quantum leap forward in coming up with a range of options that were much more in line with the town's concerns and the LWRP. And they still presented a range of options that included different depths and different dimensions for the deposition basin adjacent to the navigable inlet. They are in line now with the town's most preferred plan, and that is to deepen the navigable inlet from 12 foot at mean low water to 17 feet at mean low water, and to increase the width of the deposition basin from 50 feet wide to 100 feet wide. And that's what you see on the screen here. The purple area is the current footprint of the Navigational inlet. This area in Coonsfoot Cove hasn't been actively dredged by the Corps in a while, but it's still technically part of the footprint of the navigable inlet. But the inlet has been this channel. And the deposition basin, which is dredged out to prevent sand from accumulating too quickly within the navigable inlet, is this light blue strip here, and it's 50 feet wide. And the added deposition basin is shown in gray, and that will increase that width to 100 feet. That initial dredging cycle, the initial dredge will produce about 174,000 cubic yards of sediment. That sediment will be placed along roughly 3,000 linear feet located to the west of the inlet. And the dredging cycle, which is currently targeted between 3 and 4 years, will increase to a 7-year cycle. If you recall, the Corps had entertained possibly dredging out this shoal at the south end of the East Jetty. There are some concerns about that. That's not part of the recommended plan anymore. And at least in terms of with the hydraulic dredging, neither is taking sand from the updrift side of the inlet. It just, from their experience, it doesn't work with the same equipment that they're going to use to dredge the inlet, and would significantly increase the cost of the project. There may still be some room to take some sand mechanically. Obviously, there are some logistics involved in using a machine to scrape sand and then truck it around to the inlet. So the recommended plan by the Corps of Engineers is to increase the depth of the inlet to 17 feet at mean low water and increase the deposition basin to 100 feet wide. The area that is most directly affected is immediately west of the property. The town needs to obtain permanent easements both above and below mean high water for the placement of sand. Those are permanent easements, and temporary construction easements for the staging of material west of the inlet. The sand will be placed in a beach berm about 9 feet high, 9 feet elevation above sea level. It'll be about 44 feet wide at a 1 to 20 slope and be allowed to erode naturally between dredging cycles. I didn't catch everything that the supervisor was saying in his presentation. I did hear him talk about the safety of the inlet, and I do want to emphasize how treacherous it has been in recent years. In the last year prior to the last dredging, there were 9 documented vessel groundings on departure, and those boats are not loaded, and that gives you an idea of just how precarious the navigation of the inlet is. That 17-foot depth is what has been optimized as both reducing commercial delays, preventing vessel damage. At a deeper design depth, it starts becoming a lesser benefit to cost ratio. The soonest the congressional funds could be allocated would be in the year 2023, and that would result in construction being occurring in the year 2024. What the Corps needs now from the town are 2 things they're requesting from us, and that is a letter of support for the recommended selected plan and a statement of self-certification of financial capability for the design and initial construction costs. As you may remember from our last discussion, this is a federal project, and the town is the non-federal partner. Frequently, the state is the non-federal partner, but the state does not participate in navigation-only projects, which this is. The storm reduction benefits are a secondary benefit. The primary benefit here is enhanced navigation. I'm not sure where you want me to go from here, Peter. I can get into a little bit more detail as to some of the town's costs at this time.
Yeah, I think at this point the town costs. I mean, the self-certification of finances is not a problem for us, and I suspect that we actually get a better rate on our borrowing than that which the federal government would give us based on the current Treasury bond amount. So we probably would self-finance anyway.
Right. I should mention the initial town's cost is provided in in-kind services, and the town will undertake the costs of obtaining the easements, and that will be the town's initial 10% contribution, maybe a little bit more. And the financing that you're talking about would be an additional 10% that is required upon the completion of construction, that the town can either finance itself or mortgage.
So the first portion is deemed to be in-kind services, the second 10%, because I thought the total tip was to be 10% of cost share in these projects. That was one question I think we'd asked prior, and I don't know if we got the answer back on that from the Corps. Local sponsor is supposed to be 10% of total project, 90% federal. If we're doing the 10% in kind, why would we need to pay an additional 10% after?
Yeah, the best explanation I have, Peter, is that the Corps uses interesting semantics in how they allocate the Corps costs. They do describe it as a 90-10 split, but as you can see from what I'm sharing on the screen, in reality, it's
I've heard of core math before. You know, it's a core subject, core math, but 10 plus 10 to me equals 20. So I think in all reality, most people would consider that 20% in the end. So we're looking at about 1.2 million, roughly.
Yes, or half of that will be in in-kind services, and the other half of that would be upon completion of the construction, which would be in about 3.5 years.
When you say in-kind services, there may be actual costs, that we're expending for surveys or something of that nature.
Correct.
Legal fees, drafting easement agreements, etc. So I think we have to recognize what our total potential exposure would be. And again, that's the Corps' estimate of what those costs are. So I think those are I completely support enhancing the channel. I think that's something that's really been, insufficient for so many years, and it's really created problems and safety concerns, especially in inclement weather when boats are trying to come in. There have been cases where boats have struck bottom or gotten stranded and had some close calls. I think that's something that's well supported, and the side benefit of having additional sand placed to the west in that high erosion zone, not a bad thing either, I don't think. So I just think we need to go in with eyes wide open as to what the costs would be. Do we have an idea from them? I mean, it says the construction the project would start on the 23rd, provided federal funding becomes available. At what point would we be fully committed in the project?
Well, I think we become fully committed in the project when we signed a planned partnership agreement with the Corps. And then we're fully committed. They are looking to get congressional allocation of the funds in 2023 and construction in 2024. Okay. But I think we're committed sooner than that.
I think we'll have to take a look at the again, the capital planning and in the financial side of this, I think it's something we can do. But again, we'll want to take a close look at the finances. I do think it's a project we're supporting. Any comments from board members or questions for Brian regarding this?
So Peter, who is going, who's going to get the easements? And what if a property owner does not grant the easement in front of their particular house?
Well, I take it to mean that the town is responsible for getting the easements, and I think that's certainly another component. I think if I were a property owner in that location, having sand placed in front of my house would be something I would support. And you know, there is a requirement that I believe that the public have a right of egress along that beach then, if the sand is placed there.
Peter, they actually did they indicated they no longer require that, which I think it'll make it a lot easier to convince the property owners to allow us to put the sand there.
Okay, so there isn't necessarily a requirement.
That is what they told us in the last discussion we had, that they don't have a requirement that there be public access over this portion of the property. So it's just an easement to place the sand. So that should make it fairly easy, I think, to convince most property owners to let us put the sand there.
Okay, thank you for that.
It was definitely a change from the prior.
Yeah, that's a significant change. So,
but it is still up to the town to get those easements to the to the Army Corps. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Brian, just two questions on there. Talking about easements on there. I know we look at the easements to place the sand, but a passing way easement always, I believe, would be beneficial to the public. And I don't know if we can incorporate that any which way as we try to move forward on there. I know we don't have to have potentially any parking spots or any public access points to it, but a passing way easement so the public can traverse the beach, I would be supportive of. And then also as far as the design of this, I know, I believe, Brian, you were saying that there's not going to be any perpendicular temporary groins in this area. That was one of the original plans that was up there. This is just going to be a stand only 5-star project, as you would like to say, or gold star project. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that. The shore perpendicular groins have been eliminated from consideration. They're not part of the recommended plan. There were other problems with them besides the lack of compatibility with the LWRP. It is a sand placement project. I was on the call with John where with the Corps where they had indicated they did not require a public access easement for the sand placement. The public will benefit from any sand placement here if there's a passable beach below mean high water or below mean low water there, and you have safe egress east and west, which doesn't exist right now. That is a public benefit, but the area above mean high water does not require the passing easement that previous iterations of the plan had.
Okay, and then what about potentially any type of erosion control structures that might be down there that are illegally installed, such as temporary sandbags? Does this project encompass any of those areas, or how does the Corps look?
I don't think it goes that far, David. It goes 3,000 feet is about equivalent of where Gannett Drive is.
Okay. Oh, so okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. What is access to the beach like now, Brian?
I'm sorry?
What is access to the beach like at the present time? Do those owners, what's the nature of that beach? Are they using that beach?
It's really minimal. The beach seaward of the bulkhead is ephemeral. It really shifts around as sand gets pushed in. It doesn't last. You'll notice most of the property owners don't have stairs out there. They have ladders that just scale down the face of the bulkhead. And if it's a low tide and there's a little bit of sand there, then that's the extent of the beach. Most of them really don't have any beach to speak of until you get significantly west of where we're talking about right now. There's still an area that's been categorized as a pocket beach in the area of the Culloden Shores Property Owners Association. It's only a couple of hundred linear feet, maybe a little bit more than that. It's become a little bit more discontinuous as properties continue to harden in there, and it's really a relic of what it once was.
So the result of the easements and the placing of the sand is basically erosion control. It's not really beach.
If I'm able to share the screen, I think we'll have a better view of.
Should I stop sharing?
I think if you stop sharing a second, I can put this up. And let's see, where do you go?
I think, Jeff, a lot of it is the most appropriate use of the dredge spoil, the best use of dredge material, and that's using it to offset the, to help restore the sediment budget as sand flows from east to west. This is where the sand would go if there wasn't an inlet there. That's really where you want to get it.
Okay.
So you can see the only sandy portion is right here off the Gossman's dock. Anywhere where you have shore hardening structures, there's really no sand. And this is the Culloden Beach, which is it's just under 900 feet long. That's really the only section in that whole stretch that has sand now, because there's no shore hardening structures. Again, that's a really high energy zone. If any of you have ever been down there during a hurricane or nor'easter, it is pretty unbelievable. Gannett Drive is right here, so 3,000 feet is approximately this stretch. So it's just short of where the Culloden Shores beach is.
Okay, I was just trying to ascertain if we'd have any difficulty negotiating with property owners, but it seems like it has a good selling point, frankly, to property owners.
I think if I was a property owner there, I would certainly welcome the placement of sand as part of this project, but I can't speak for those folks. I think we should probably do some outreach directly to the community there on the properties that might be affected, and have some preliminary discussions about the project and see what kind of responses we get.
I think that would be important. Otherwise, people need time to absorb something like that. It's not an easily understood at first, the first presentation.
So it might be helpful if Brian and John could put together some talking points, and maybe, a map or an overhead or two, so that we could start that process.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Looks like we have a caller on the line. I'd like to go to the caller. If you can just hang on for a minute, Brian. I don't know if this is related to our current discussion or just public comment. Again, I like to try and get the callers whenever they come on.
Hello, caller, you're live.
Can you hear me, Peter?
Good afternoon. Who's on the line? Hello.
It's Rona Hotman from Amagansett.
Hi, Rona. How are you?
The reason why good. Hope you all are well too. I was just reading that Southampton had opened up their town hall, and I was wondering, since we're going into phase 3 soon, when did you all plan to open up town hall?
So my understanding from talking to Supervisor Schneiderman is that they're open on a by appointment only basis at the moment. That may change in the near future. We currently have been meeting with some folks by appointment, depending on the department. We are working on a process with the town clerk to allow for will call, basically pickup of permits and drop off. We've had a drop box. But again, I think part of that also relates to when the governor relaxes the 50% rule on non-essential employees. We've been making preparations for the last several weeks for having the public back at town hall offices by putting up sneeze guard, glass windows at counters and whatnot, where we meet the public, and going over the protocols that will be necessary. We've had every department head within the town prepare and present their plans for reopening to the public, which has been reviewed by the reopening committee to make sure, including our safety officer, to make sure that those protocols put in place will be safe when the public comes back. So at this point, sit tight, Rona. We'll certainly be announcing to the public when we go back to having folks in at some of the departments. Again, depending on
if you had a plan and whether that would be sent out. I know you send out a lot of press releases, but this plan should be going out to residents so they are prepared.
Prepared for coming to town hall. I mean, it's just a matter of getting in your car and driving here. In terms of protocols, we're still going to be asking everyone to be wearing masks when they come to town hall when we reopen. We think that's appropriate, and we'll be, depending on the department in that situation, we'll be socially distancing, keeping queue lines 6 feet apart or greater. And again, we're trying to work with the public in ways that does not congregate people in large numbers. The clerk's office is an obvious situation where many people come for permits, especially this time of year. And we want to make sure that the pickup and drop off is done in a safe manner. So we're likely to put up a will call booth or window or tent out in the parking lot so that people can come. They'll be notified by telephone as to when their permit's ready for pickup. They could drive up and just state their name and pick up their permit. So that's the way we're imagining unveiling that additional contact with the public initially for the clerk's office. And again, we've been working over our plans. We'll make a public statement or a press release when we start actually instituting that. I would expect that would happen in the next week or so. Thanks for calling.
The other thing I wanted to mention is I was really surprised that David Lease didn't know that Amagansett does have a satellite food pantry, and it's manned by Joan Tope. So
I actually heard him read that off of the website, so he did know. He read it out to Lenny Saltz just a little while ago. I'm surprised you didn't hear that.
I did. I was watching, and I didn't understand what. I think he was just reading a mission statement of the food pantry, and we do have a satellite in Amagansett, just as Wainscott has.
Maybe you could convey that. Maybe you can convey that to Lenny, since I think you know her, right?
I can jump in here a little bit because I checked my notes. There is an Amagansett food pantry in St. Michael's in their community room, and Amagansett is open from like November to April, and when they're not open, people go to East Hampton, and there are separate volunteers for Amagansett as well, which I found in my notes, and they include people we know like John Ryan, Joan Tulp, Pat LaCaruba, Margaret Galtieri, and a lot of other Amagansett volunteers. So there is something for Amagansett.
That would have been great to share with Lenny when she called.
Yeah, I had to check my notes on it.
Well, thanks for calling, Rona. So let's get back to our discussion if we don't have any other callers on the line. Army Corps of Engineers enhanced navigation improvements with Brian Frank. So at this point, it sounds like some additional outreach to homeowners along that stretch where the dredged sand would be placed under this project, and then a little closer look at the financial aspects and capital plan if we decide to commit the funds for the town's 10% share towards the project. Do we have a deadline for for getting back to the Corps about this?
Well, the Corps is very anxious to get our letter of support. Colonel Asbury is the outgoing commanding officer and has worked with us pretty closely, and would like to see this initiated or completed, depending on, I guess, which end you look at it, on his watch. And he is leaving that station at the end of the month.
I see. And does that letter of support commit us to financial expenditures, or was that just saying that we generally favor the project? And
I believe they're separate.
Letter of support, I believe.
We sent a letter. Maybe it wasn't as direct as they would have liked it. We had sent them a letter that said that we found that the revisions were consistent with the LWRP, but it maybe wasn't as direct as saying we support the recommended project, because technically there wasn't one yet. There was still a tentatively selected plan. There were still a range of depths that they were looking at. It wasn't as tangible as it is now.
Understood. Okay, well, I guess we'll double back on that issue and see what exactly that will entail in terms of a commitment by the town. And we have to do some outreach and take a look at the finances. Any other questions for Brian at this time? Okay, thanks so much, Brian. Appreciate your work on this.
Thank you, everyone.
So that brings us up to our fifth work session topic today, which is PR firm recommendations. We've talked about enhancing communications with the public. This has become especially, I think, important during the time of pandemic. We've done a great deal in terms of putting out information, press releases, and on social media and on the town website. And I presented a graph last work session that showed that our website is more than double in terms of respondents. Really increased significantly as there is so much important information. But we know from past years as well that engagement and outreach to the public is somewhat challenging. Even though we have 3 or 4 local newspapers here in town, we have LTV, which does a great service to us in getting out the word and televising our meetings. We do have a website, but there certainly are a number of instances, particularly within social media platforms like Facebook and whatnot, for us to improve. There are improvements that can and should be made with our website moving forward. We are scheduled for a redo of the website, and I think having some professional consultants helping us with that is important. We did put out a request for proposals, and we received a number of those. I know Kathy Burke-Gonzalez and Sylvia Overby were heading that effort up. So I'll just hand it over to the both of you to talk about that process and talk about the selection committee's recommendations.
Yeah, I want to add to what the supervisor said, was that not only are we redoing websites and are we doubling our amount of participation from the community on our different platforms, but the business recovery group also sent the supervisor a letter asking that the town board consider hiring an organization to help with communications about COVID-19 related issues. And these were, the information needed to go to residents, second homeowners, business visitors, and more. And the letter that the supervisor received stated that such support from a seasoned communications organization serves to remove unnecessary friction and to more fluidly communicate important health and safety measures to our residents, future visitors to the area, and to our business operators alike. So as the liaison to the Business Recovery Group, I discussed with the board during town board work sessions moving forward with hiring a PR firm as a communication specialist for the town. And we got the letter, let me just back up a little bit, received the letter May 20th, and by May 22nd, we had the proposal out. And Kathy was really instrumental in working with Jean Carosa in getting this proposal out. So Kathy, if you want to go through that proposal.
Sure. Yeah, so it's not technically an RFP, and Jeannie Carosa can expound on why that is the case. So we called it a solicitation of proposals, and we felt that we needed to put together a document that Jeannie could send out to PR firms so that everybody was, knew what we were looking for and everybody was working off the same page. So we put this together. We listed what the duties of a communication specialist would be. And what the town was looking for, what their proposal should contain, the resumes of the professionals that would be working on it, a concise but detailed narrative of the proposed approach, what their budget would be, samples of their work, and references. And we put together, evaluation criteria. And now it's not, for instance, when we had the presentation today by Melissa and Chris, it's not like we graded it because it's a little bit more fluid than that. But we looked at the experience of the key personnel, particularly if they've worked with public officials or agencies that are similar to the issues that we're addressing with the town. We looked at the quality of their work samples, the scope and appropriateness of the services that they proposed, to see that they had a clear understanding of what the town was looking for, and capability of being able to provide consistent and timely responses, because we're in a 24-hour news cycle, and the cost for those services. So I believe Jeannie sent out proposals to 6 firms, and then other folks passed them on. Unless anybody has any questions, I know the board was copied on the solicitation of proposal that we drafted and that went out. I'll hand it back to Sylvia, and she can tell us, where we are now.
So the deadline to receive the proposals was June 8th, and we were fortunate to receive 4 excellent proposals. And a committee was formed to interview the 3 of the firms. The 4th firm was a single woman shop, person shop. And we felt right away that might be too small in order to grapple with some of the issues that we needed, in the 24-hour cycle that we are in. We thought we needed a larger group. The committee that was put together was Melissa Winslow and Scott Wilson from the town, Kathy Burt-Gonzalez and myself from the board, and then Ed Reale, who is the secretary of the Business Recovery Group, and Thomas Herman, who is the chair of the Business Recovery Group. So the interviews were conducted on Friday and yesterday, and we do have a recommendation for the town to consider, and that recommendation is for a firm called Berlin Rosen. And I also sent all the board members their proposals or their proposal. And I think some of the things that I thought were, when we were on the interview Zoom call, were important is that they are familiar with the area. There seems that there would be no ramp up time in getting started. They are the importance of engaging the community across all platforms to reach our different segments of our community is very important. Local residents, visitors, employees, businesses, and more. They are very concerned about making sure that all the information they put out is what they call trustful for all segments of the population that make up East Hampton. So those are just some of the reasons that I felt. Kathy may have had different notes, but I think, as we looked at them, the different groups, of the different proposals, this is the one I think that stood out. So this is what we're recommending to the board. Are there any questions?
Well, I did get forwarded.
What's the cost on this?
I believe it was $10,000 per month cap total.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have a billing schedule based on their personnel and who's working. It's a very similar billing type of schedule that you find with law firms or engineering firms, other professional firms in their submittals to the town. And again, with a monthly cap, I believe at 10,000. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, no, that's correct. It was in the proposal, Jeff, at the, if you didn't have time to read it, it's towards the end.
I had time to read it, Sylvia. It's 25 pages long and it came in last night. I have it.
Well, it's right there.
How many months are we looking at to begin with? Or is it just the 10?
It was through November, was it?
Yeah, it was the proposal we asked for was a 6 month.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
6 month commitment.
So it's $60,000. I'm not that enthusiastic about this, to tell you the truth. I know that, I've looked at their proposal, and among other things, they want to, generate consistent positive press coverage. I just feel like in the midst of the pandemic, when we're looking at other costs that were, rather carefully scrutinized. I'm thinking back when we were discussing the possibility of contributing to the food pantries, which was not done. We didn't put our hands in our pockets for that. On COVID testing, which probably in Montauk would run about $50,000 for 3 months. We waited around to get a private donor to help us do the program. It just seems, I can't see this as a necessary expense. I think it's separate from redesigning our website. I think our website probably does need a little help, but I don't, you pointed out the other day that, we're getting good traffic on the website that are following our press releases. And I just, when I look at the other expenses that we've kind of scrutinized and not chosen to make, I just don't see this as a critical expense. I don't think we need to hire a public relations firm to generate positive press coverage. I think our press coverage is going to come from what we do and what we say. So I'm not really in favor of this.
So I just want to go back and say really about communications and making sure that our communications are consistent. I'm hopeful that, that they would, well, anyway, that everything is consistent. And I think that's what the Business Recovery Group is looking for, is consistency in a message. And sometimes I know, we've been working with different groups and trying to get all of us back on track. And I think that's part of why we need to have a communication specialist, is to make sure that kind of communication is the kind of communication that we want for every segment of East Hampton. And again, you can't conflate, the food pantries with this. This is a different issue. And we are talking about making sure people stay safe and know what the safety issues are and the safe rules are. And I think this is important for us to keep moving forward for those that visit, those that work here. I'm concerned about employees, that they make sure that everything that they're hearing is consistent within the town government, so that the businesses also are relating the same information to their employees, because they're the ones that are going to come into contact with the population that's here.
Well, I think we've been sending a pretty consistent message, and I have to chuckle a little because maybe I favor a little more inconsistency among the town board members, not necessarily on safety issues, but I think we've done a pretty good job of giving them the rules. Most of the rules are coming from the governor. We've got protocols that we're following, for example, on on opening into this next phase. We've got very detailed protocols, which we've given out to the public. And I don't know if I want to spend $60,000 to make our messaging more consistent and seek to get better press coverage. I think I'd rather just do the right thing.
I think the issue is, and I have to say, we've been with committees in the weeds. I mean, we hear the inconsistencies. When we've been working with opening our beaches, opening our businesses, making sure people are fed and that, our seniors are taken care of. There are some of us that have been in the weeds with this, and we know that there are inconsistencies out there. And that's why we need a consistent message to make sure.
We're all in the weeds on this. So I get complaints too, and I see what's going on. But, I don't see that hiring a public relations firm, when we're 3 months into a COVID epidemic is, I just don't see that as important as I did, maybe getting some skin in the game with food pantries. Could have gotten, we could have done a little budget modification to get COVID testing more quickly. But,
yeah, so Jeff, I appreciate your comments, but I'm going to disagree with your approach. When we talked about the food pantries, many of us were already directing thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to our local food pantries. That effort's been ongoing. There's an additional $200,000 that's been raised for our local food pantries, through our efforts. Again, committing, I think, town taxpayer funds rather than directing private donations for things that others are willing and can cover is appropriate. We're not going to ask for private donations to fund better communication with the general public, but if you know of anybody who would like to contribute to that effort, we'd be happy to have them pay for it as well. I think that communication is always important. We clearly still have issues with getting a message out on Facebook. I looked at posts in the last couple of days. The number of people who don't really seem to understand what the rules are is evident in their saying that folks aren't following the rules and posting photographs of people who are actually exactly following the rules with regard to outdoor dining, for instance. So I think, there are a number of people in the public who we still haven't reached, even though we've talked time and time again about you have to socially distance, that outdoor dining means that you, once seated, can take off your masks. Apparently this message isn't being broadcast widely enough, even though we've been saying this for days now. I do think that having professional consultants help us with redesigning our website is critical. I don't think that's something that town has the skill set for. And I think, having people who know how to build and manage and direct communications and outreach as their primary function are best suited to advise us on how to better do that. We talk about community outreach on any number of things. There have been examples time after time where even after years of discussion with Hamlet planning, having people come to town board meetings asking, when were you going to make this public? After 15 or 20 news articles, countless board meetings, etc. Engaging the public is challenging, and I do think that on social media platforms, having some more expertise assisting us in getting the word out is absolutely supportable. So that's my feeling. I know how you feel about it, Jeff, because you made it very clear. I don't know how any of the other board members feel about it.
I'm going to make one other thing clear. I just wish that we had equal enthusiasm to spend about $50,000 or $60,000 of our own money to get COVID testing 2-3 months ago, rather than searching around.
Jeff, we've had COVID testing from the moment it became available. We partnered with HRH and the Healthcare Foundation. It's been operating next door to Town Hall here for weeks now, since earlier in May. And there was, the hospital did reach out to me with interest in having another pop-up site in Montauk. That got privately funded. I think it's great. you know, anywhere that others in the community feel they want to step up and help at a time like this, we welcome that. And let's reserve taxpayer dollars for those things that are most appropriately paid for to fill in gaps, which there haven't been any with the food pantries to date. If there are gaps in the future, we'll have that money in reserve and ready to spend for that purpose. But as it is now, we've had a very generous community that's come forward and has funded these efforts. So it really hasn't been necessary for us to expend funds in that way yet. And I'm ready to do that when a gap occurs.
I'd just rather see us, you know, put our hand in our pocket for COVID testing rather than waiting for a private donor, and rather than spending the money on an entity that's talking about controlling the narrative, consistency, and obtaining positive press reaction. That just doesn't seem to me to be as important as saying, hey, let's get Montauk testing done, you know, immediately with $50,000 of our own money.
I also look at it this way, everyone, is that we run an $81 million business right now. This is something that probably should have been done years ago, maybe even decades ago, to bring someone onto staff to assist with the public outreach aspect of it. Public outreach has gone for anything from just newspaper clippings to WLNG. Now it's Facebook, now it's Instagram, and everything else my kids use that I don't use right now. So to get a person out there to get as much information out there as possible right now, I think it could be appropriate for us to use. And then it might be something that if it's successful, and then we can deem this to be deemed successful, it might be something that we might want to put into our budget for a staff member at a later time. But we are going through an epidemic right now like we've never seen before. I think this is something that we should look into right now to get as much information out there. Phone calls are ringing all the time about cross information. I think that's the worst thing we can have right now. So whatever means possible that will increase our communication whatever we can do to make it possible to increase our communication with the general public, I think is very important right now as an $81 million business.
Well, my only comment to that is I agree with much of what you said, but we're not a business, we're a government. We're a government, and I don't think shaping the messages and controlling.
That's fine. We'll take that back, Jeff. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like we have 4 members generally in support of this effort, and Mr. Bragman is not. So I think at this point we can move on to other topics. And Jeff, I think you're presenting the next one. We have Wainscott Green.
Yeah, really, I just put it on because I wanted to hear any feedback from the board. I think we're pretty close to having the plan, a real plan. And I just wanted to hear, I had a chance to talk to Peter yesterday. Thank you, Peter, for chatting with me about it. And I thought he had a good idea on the parking that's on the plan to not pave the non-handicap parking and just leave it as grass parking, which I have a feeling the Wainscott community would like because it's a little bit more rural. And we also talked about, I had talked to Steve Lynch about the use of concrete aggregate for the walkway because we want to have a handicap accessible walking area, and he raised some reservations about using concrete aggregate because you don't always know what the source is and how clean it is. And Peter, if I'm not getting ahead of myself here, you agreed with that when we spoke yesterday. And then the other issue, if it's an issue, is that the Wainscott community has said they'd like to put 3 benches in. They would basically just space them out around the loop that's created. I don't think that's controversial. I talked to Tony Whitman. He said there's plenty of room for 3 benches. The idea of a shelter is on hold for this portion of the this phase of getting this thing ready to go. We've talked before, Peter, about the money coming out of surplus for this. I don't know if we have to take any formal action to do that. I don't know if there's a budget modification that we would have to do, so I would like some input on that. But otherwise, I'm just here. I see Kathy shaking her head, which probably means, was that a yes?
Yes, you need a budget modification.
Okay.
What is the
Jeff,
cost?
do you
What's the
have-
estimated cost for the plan?
I don't have an estimated cost. We
Well,
just
okay.
got the plan, and I've been talking to Steve Lynch about doing the installation. I think that's where it would come from.
Do you have the schematic? I know that there was a revised plan.
Yeah, I passed that around to everybody. I sent that around.
Do you have that to share today with us?
I don't have it to put up on a screen share.
So you emailed that to us. I see the management plan. You have
About a week
that,
ago.
Yeah,
But
no,
that was.
I emailed the plan to you. I can probably email it to you all right.
So I got,
Again.
yeah, you sent it, I think, yesterday, but.
No, I sent.
No, he sent it about a week ago.
A while ago. Yeah, the
Okay,
schematic went out. What I sent yesterday was just the management plan. And that had already been previously circulated and amended. If you stand by, I can send you all the schematic.
Okay, because the schematic is going to be different than the management plan, because the management plan has a shelter in it, and you're saying you're not doing the shelter? You're not.
They're talking about doing it in phases, and the shelter is not contemplated right now. They're planning to raise money for the shelter. That's what the community has in mind.
Yeah, Jeff, that information about donations was embedded in one of your emails also for park benches and such. So I don't know if there's been a commitment that we can find out what those costs are. I know some of the members of Wainscott were looking into that. I don't know if you have any of those costs. I know
they don't
benches
really,
sometimes are about $2,500.
No, I think it's considerably more than that, actually, because they're talking about, from what I can gather, they're talking about something like what we have at Maidstone Park, that kind of an open structure.
Okay, I have it here, Jeff. I'll put it up on the screen. I found it. You bear with me for just a moment.
Yeah, I'm sending it to you as well right now.
Yeah, I have it up. I just have to do the screen share now.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate it.
Sure. Screen share. And where is it? Well, I did have it up.
You should have the email that just came through.
Okay, let me look for it there.
Jeff, have you been able to reach out to PSE&G about the removal of the telephone pole in Ardsley at all?
No, I think that's in another phase as well. They're putting off, the major capital improvements that would be required. I think that was in connection with the a later stage. All they're thinking about now is benches and parking. That's all.
Yeah, well, that was discussed because it was the access path there on Ardsley, and that pole would actually decrease the sight vision for when people are going to be driving in. And with by contacting PSE&G, they actually would do it at their cost, not the town. Yeah. That's what I was wanting to contact them.
No, because that was.
So my comments to Jeff were about the size of the parking lot, and you see, I think it's appropriate location for the handicap space and parking, but I just question about whether or not we needed to, put gravel over this large expanse when in some of our other parks, some of the overflow parking is just grass parking. So if we just were to designate grass parking, if we found that over time, that there was enough use to justify improving the lot, that the grass wouldn't survive, then we could certainly add gravel parking spaces and improve them in that way. So this is these path areas. Again, I think stone dust is probably more appropriate than crushed concrete, as you said. The crushed concrete recycled blend, you don't really know what the sources are, and they could have potentially some contaminants, asbestos or something else in them. So
yeah, Steve was
stone dust, which is crushed bluestone, basically works out fairly well.
So what we're talking about, at least initially, is just paving the handicap spot.
That would be these spots.
Yeah, and they're talking about 3 benches, basically, sort of equally spaced out around.
Scattered around the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a tree. They have a donation for a tree, a flowering dogwood tree, which is a beautiful tree.
So at this point, we're really just talking about the parking. Do you have a plan for implementing the walkway as well, or?
I've talked to Steve about that, and I think his department could do it in-house. I got to confirm that with him, but we spoke about that.
So let's, why don't you follow up on what the costs of the improvements would be, and then we can look to how we would fund that.
Okay, and we'll do a budget modification.
Well, yeah, I mean, a transfer or budget modification depends on whose budget you're taking it out of, whether or not there's funds in there for this purpose or not, or if we're using contingency or surplus or what. We'll have to figure that out, but having an idea what the total cost would be would help us know where to take the money from.
Okay, sounds good.
And the plan is you're going to try and get this done in time for a fall ribbon cutting. Is that the plan?
That's what they would like. They would like to have a ribbon cutting in fall.
When you say they, you mean the Wainscott CAC?
The Wainscott CAC had requested, if possible, that we could have a ribbon cutting in.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to have had a ribbon cutting, and we certainly, as soon as it's somewhat finished, we'd be happy to do that. So if you could just follow up on those key items.
Okay.
Get an estimate of the costs, and then we'll see about how to fund it.
We'll do that.
So is the parking lot still going to remain that size, even though it's going to be grass? Is that still going to be parking all in there?
I think there's room, and if it's just grass, you just could put signs, a couple little signs indicating, parking, just to have it somewhat orderly. I think you'd want to delineate the area where you want cars to park on the grass. And again, if it gets to be so frequently used that maintaining grass is a problem, then we could convert to pervious material that will hold up better. But I'm not sure that there's going to be enough traffic to really justify doing the parking.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll have to play that by ear, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. The lawn's 80 feet wide at its widest part, and the parking lot 60 feet wide. It just seems like a lot of parking.
Yeah, so again, that's why I was suggesting to Jeff that maybe it not be improved in that way, and that we just encourage people through maybe signage or even just outlining the grass area a little bit, putting, I don't know if it would be, timber along the area here to act as a curb stop with signage, front end parking or something like that.
And the last thing I would have to say, once it's installed, which I would look forward to, is that we have to then develop an action plan for the maintenance, just as we discussed with the Sag Harbor stormwater. We have to determine who's going to be maintaining the project, overseeing the project, but also maintaining the grounds then too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll have, maybe CAC would want to take over some of the garden portions of it or something like that, adopt a park. It's not a particularly large area, and certainly we generally do the mowing on properties such as this. But if there are other plantings that they want to take up and adopt, that, I mean, that'd be terrific. So, any other comments or discussion on this matter? Okay. I guess we can move on to liaison reports. Kathy, do you have a liaison report for us?
I do. So the town's Human Services Department continues to provide assistance and essential services to seniors as well as others in need. If those need assistance, they should call Human Services at 631-329-6939. Diane gave you a good overview today of how the department's been working as far as our nutrition program is concerned. Right now, we're servicing 290 clients this week, delivering over 1,250 meals. We still have free delivery of groceries, prescriptions, and other essentials. We ask you that you use a local merchant who accepts prepaid phone orders, and you should call the Human Services Department, prior to placing any order. Yesterday, I spoke to Katie Graves, the executive director of the Eleanor Whitmore Early Childhood Center. And since COVID-19 struck, they have been offering free childcare to families of essential workers. And she wanted to let me know that the board just voted last Friday to extend the free childcare through the summer months. Their program has been such a lifeline for those community members who are working on the front lines, and a number of families who are bringing their kids to the Eleanor Whitmore Center are actually working at Southampton Hospital. So that was good news that they're going to be moving ahead with that. Late last week, we had heard from the folks at the Express News Group that they were going to be publishing a special supplement in this Thursday's, I guess it's the East Hampton Star, East Hampton Press, Southampton Press, and the Sag Harbor Express, a special supplement entitled Honoring Healthcare Heroes. And they wanted to know if the town wanted to take a full page ad in their supplement, and it was $750. So we had decided to do that. And so we were going to have an ad in that supplement honoring our healthcare heroes. And we say, thank you for protecting our lives by putting yours on the line. The town of East Hampton salutes healthcare workers, first responders, and all those serving on the front lines to keep us healthy and safe throughout the pandemic. And that monies is coming from our civil defense line. Last week, I gave you an update from the tax receiver's office on tax collections. You'll recall we were $1.2 million short on the collection last week. Because the mail has been so slow, as of Monday, June 15th, we are now $781,000 short for the town. So Carol should be closing out her collection book by the end of the week. According to Len Bernard, being short by less than $1 million is as good as we could have expected. And we're hoping to get that shortage back from the county by mid-July. So we basically have collected 99.57% of the monies that we were looking to collect. And schools in the town, as well as libraries, will be receiving their full amount. Last week, we also, I brought up special events. The governor has deemed outdoor low-risk recreational activities, allowable under his executive order on the condition that safety protocols have been, all satisfied. So we had an application from Corey's Wave for surf lessons and stand-up paddleboard instruction. And when we get to resolutions today, I have one to approve their special event permit. Just so everyone knows, their safety protocols were reviewed by Dr. Polsky, and so we're good there. Late last week, our office got a call from a recent East Hampton High School graduate on behalf of a new group that's formed, the East End Against Hate. They're a student-based organization that aims to educate the community on the racial injustices we all face together. They have peaceful intentions and will not tolerate aggression nor destruction. Through their actions, they hope to push forward local, state, and national legislation that dismantles the systemic racism deeply embedded in our country. This is the group that a week or so ago, or 10 days ago, had put on a peaceful protest in Sag Harbor Village, and they were calling because they wanted to put on a peaceful protest in Montauk. So I spoke to the organizer yesterday so that we could agree on the route. And so it's going to take place this Friday, June 19th from 3 to 5 p.m. with a rain date of Saturday. They're going to start at Lions Field at the soccer fields and march up South Edgemere and then around the Carl Fisher Plaza. I don't know how many times they'll go around, and then they're going to go back to the soccer fields where they'll have their speeches. The route has been reviewed with the town police department. They have signed off on it, and they've offered assistance with traffic and crowd control planning. I spoke to Lieutenant Claflin yesterday, and he was going to be reaching out to the organizer. So they submitted their special event permit. The resolution is on for today. We are waiving all fees, and we've also waived their certificate of liability insurance. So then I wanted to segue that into, we know that Governor Cuomo last week signed legislation, what he called a landmark reform agenda that will help reduce inequality in policing and reimagine New York's criminal justice system. He entitled that legislation, Say Their Name. And I was hoping that we could have, at an upcoming work session, maybe in July, have someone, whether from John can, appoint someone from the town attorney's office that could take us through what these new reforms are and what they mean for the town of East Hampton. He's also, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order that mandates every local government in the state to undertake a comprehensive review of their police department's procedures, and in partnership with the individual communities they serve, adopt specific reform plans, and those plans must be submitted by April 1st in order for local governments to be eligible for state funding. So it sounds like this will be an ongoing process for the next 6 to 9 months. Going back to Governor Cuomo, he announced last night that gatherings of up to 25 people will be allowed in phase 3 of reopening, up from the limit of 10. And we're anticipating that phase 3 will start Wednesday, June 24th. So as you can imagine, our phones have been ringing quite frequently from folks wanting to put in special event permits, particularly caterers, trying to understand what the town is and isn't allowing. And we had said last week that, when the governor had in his order that was, we were only going to have up to 10 people, that we weren't going to be accepting applications for, say, clam bakes on the beach. But now that it's moving up to 25, I have already gotten emails from caterers that want to understand what actions the town's going to take moving forward. And I'm going to need some direction from the board and from the town attorney's office about how we want to proceed. I'm not sure. I was trying to do a little bit of research of where catering falls in under phase 3. We've got restaurants and food services. I don't know if that includes, off-premise catering. So I was hoping that we could, you could help us fine tune that. So we could send out an email to all the caterers that we work with quite frequently over, since I've been doing this over this last 6+ years, so that they could have a heads up of what to expect and what to tell their clients when they call. So I don't know if on any of your discussions, Peter, if anything has come up, with caterers and off-premise with restaurants.
Yeah, so we haven't had any updates on that. In terms of the beaches, though, we're still under the 50% reduction of occupancy rule. So, I think that's going to be a major milestone when the governor relaxes that. That will impact how we respond on a number of fronts in terms of expanding the issuance of non-resident permits, perhaps, and some of the other permits for hotels and whatnot, as well as those types of activities on the beach. I think that all kind of relates. So we don't have any specific guidance at this point in terms of catering on the beaches, but.
We did discuss it Kathy, we did discuss that in the beach advisory group. The beach, specifically the question went out was for knowing that phase 3 would allow 25 people to gather, would we want to allow assembly permits for 25 people to gather on the beach? It was unanimous that it was yes, but that would include all participants. So there wouldn't be any difference between an employee of a catering company or a participant. So it would be total 25 people. But yes, that was agreed upon, and that's part of my liaison report upcoming too.
So how does the rest of the board feel? I mean, where do we want to net out as far as having? I mean, yes, there's a 50%, occupancy on the beach, but in the evening, once the sun is going down, we don't have hundreds of people on the beach. And many of our catered events are for 25 or less. So I just, and I don't know, maybe we want John to do, to look into the executive order and see if there are any mentions of caterers and off-premise catering. I don't know what if that falls.
I don't believe there's a prohibition against the activity, provided that it follows guidelines. But again, if we can't have gatherings of more than 10 people, and you're counting the catering staff, that's going to be
Wednesday the 24th, it's going to be gatherings up to 25 people, right?
That's the 24th. So
right.
Again, I don't have a problem with it if we're staying within the guidelines, but the restrictions haven't been relaxed as of yet. And I do think that that catering obviously would have to be after beach hours.
Well, it's always lifeguards go off at 5. We don't allow anything to start until at least 6 o'clock. We give a full hour for people.
I was going to suggest that we maybe ask John to have a look at the orders before we have to leap in and make a decision right on the spur of the moment today. It would probably be helpful to get a little legal input, just another set of eyes reading over the governor's rules.
Yeah, I just, I don't know if it's going to be the same as what workers do in the restaurants, but they have to wear masks at all times. So it has to be very clear if we're going to be doing catering on the beach. And again, we need a communications expert to help us sort through all of this. It would be good to have that advice for catering, for restaurant businesses, anyone that's serving the public. So, I would just ask some of those questions to make sure that the guidance that is going to be given by the town is, consistent.
Right. And Sylvia, does your business recovery group meet this week?
They do.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe you could also, bring it up. There's a number of folks on that are on the hospitality. So they may have done some,
There's also guidance, Kathy, there's also guidance put out there already by the governor, and the guidance would be for reopening New York, food services guidelines for employers or employees for phase 3. And these guidelines, they say, apply to all restaurants and food service establishments, including local food trucks and other food concessions. So there is a litany of guidance that's already been put out. And again, that's part of that information that we need to press out to all the residents.
Okay.
And
it's very similar to what you've already been discussing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right,
And
great.
I don't know if the catering, well, I don't know. I'm just off the cuff. At the beach, you're safer if you're outside. That's good. If somebody wants a birthday party in their home, are we going to look at that, or as a catered event, or no,
because home, and home, you don't need one until I think it's 50 people as you hit that threshold. So it wouldn't require them to come to us for that.
Okay. Right. I forgot. Yep.
Okay. And then I just wanted to talk for a second about East Hampton Volunteer Ocean Rescue. Ocean Rescue's been responding to water emergencies 24 hours a day, 365 days a year since 2003. And for the last few years, they've been working to be recognized as an emergency rescue and first aid squad under New York State General Municipal Law. So they've been working with Assemblyman Thiel and Senator Laval on legislation, and got notification end of last week that that legislation had passed both the Assembly and the Senate, and that it's on the governor's desk. And once the governor signs it, we then need a town board resolution, and I was hoping to offer that, recognizing them as emergency rescue and first aid squad. And then once they are designated by the town, they can affix a green light to any motor vehicle that's owned by a member of Ocean Rescue with the permission of the chief officer, which is now Bob Pucci. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to the governor signing that legislation. So, because we all know that when the call comes, Ocean Rescue answers it, whether that's responding to an emergency at an unprotected beach or showing up for all these volunteering. They up at 5 in the morning. They're out for when folks are doing fundraisers for swim, or when Councilman Lease is doing his paddlers for humanity, you know, 18 miles over to Block Island. Ocean Rescue's there, or I Try, you know, their girls are doing their triathlon, and Ocean Rescue, you know, they show up, and they're also, you know, at events and fairs throughout the town, educating the community on water safety. So I've actually set up an alert so that I'll be notified when the governor signs it, so that we can, John is already drafted the resolution. So we're anxiously waiting the governor's signature on that. And then lastly,
Kathy, can I just break into that just
sure.
one quick second? Let's take it one further. I was social distancing with my family out on Napeague, and Chief Bob Pucci was on patrol. You know, they're doing their beach patrols, and I think one further, maybe knowing that this is the season that Ocean Lifeguard is desperately needing, knowing that there was actually a rescue down at Old Beach Lane 2 weeks ago from a drowning individual during the middle of the week. I would support drafting even a letter of reminder that it's, you know, that this legislation is on the governor's desk. Maybe we can send that to the governor, knowing that it's important to sign it now so we can get into action as soon as possible, knowing how many people are you know, out and wanting to go swim in the waters.
So I would have to put together a letter from the entire board if the board wants to unanimously
I'd
support
love
that. We did send a letter. I did send a letter of support for the legislation to bolster, you know, Assemblyman Thiel's and Senator Laval's effort in the legislature. I'm glad it passed, and happy to send another letter to the governor asking him to please sign it. And of course, support a resolution for this fantastic volunteer organization, making that designation once the governor does sign.
And then lastly, I'm making my 2020 census pitch. I went on to the map to just see where the town of East Hampton falls. And I did this about a week or so ago. So across the country, they have 60% participation of people that have already responded to the census. In New York State, it's at 55%. CD1 is at 55%, and the town of East Hampton is at 25.5%, which, you know, and in some parts of the town is worse than others. Wainscott is at 17.2%, Amagansett at 5.3%, the Napeague stretch is at 11%, Montauk 23%. I think that it demonstrates that it should be a townwide mailing, because we are so far behind, because, you know, so many of our folks are, you know, don't get their mail delivered to their street address. It goes to a post office box. So I know this is something that I said that I was working on, and I am. It just, some of these special events kind of bumped it out of the way because of the need to get.
Kathy, I think it also demonstrates the need for hiring public relations outreach.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, the census is a crucially important effort for our town, as it will affect our congressional district, our apportionment of our representation. It affects the amount of money we become eligible for a whole myriad of federal, state, and county programs. It's the basis of determining so many things, and so it's
right. And we use it in our planning documents to, you know, for
absolutely critical.
Housing and seniors and Hamlet studies and business studies, and we're going to use this data for the next 10 years.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I appreciate your efforts on moving that forward, and I look forward to having the PR firm help extend our reach to the public on this effort.
All right, beautiful. That's what I've got today. Thank you.
David, you have a liaison report?
I do. The Nature Preserve Committee met via Zoom the other day. We had a report from our trail stewards, our land management stewards that are continuing their trail maintenance. They posted new recently purchased CPF properties. They did the mowing on as per the management plan for the Bays Lane Preserve. They're still doing southern pine beetle inspections. And they also assisted in the posting of COVID-19 warning signs at our major trailheads. The committee discussed continuing forward with the discussion for deer exclosures as part of a scientific study. We'll get ready to potentially present that to the board in the upcoming weeks, or hopefully in the next few months there. We also discussed, a lot about 555. That's the head of the topic right now. We're requesting the Suffolk County do a soil analysis for suitability for potentially for agriculture as it was used in the past. So we can make sure that the management plan is fully encompassing. I do have a request. Jeff, if you can help me, could you get the Gansett Meadows vegetation plan for me and send it to me? It'd be greatly appreciated, because they want to look at that and how to incorporate their vegetation plan into what might happen on the 555 property. It would assist me.
Yep, thank you. We'll do that.
Thank you. The upcoming discussions are going to continue around 555. They would like to also look into some trailhead restoration projects. Some trailheads are becoming overgrown, not as much parking. Trying to look long-term on that, maybe do one or two, every couple months, and hopefully we get them in the next couple of years. I got a report from the Beach Advisory Committee. The beaches this week were very well attended, not even near 50% attended, but they were also very well messaged and protected. It is as some might recognize, the town board has decided, based on the simple factors, that there's a lot of offshore rips right now, also sunny weather, and the children being out of school earlier this week. The town board has taken the action to open full-time the 4 ocean beaches, being Indian Wells, Atlantic, South Edison, and Dish Plains, starting yesterday. So they're a week early. I thank Kathy for bringing that forward. Thank the rest of the board for the support on that. And they're up and operational now. This is also supported by the Beach Advisory Committee. Secondly, this is the week that full-time, which would be on June 20th, the recommendation was from the advisory committee when we discussed this just a little over a month ago, that we would open up our 3 bay beaches. And we would do this under our beach action plans and any restrictions. Is the recommendation of the Beach Advisory Committee to still move forward with this and open up the 3 bathing bay beaches, which would be Chin Beach and Montauk, Big Albert and Amagansett, and Maidstone this coming Saturday, and to move forward with all protocols in place. And I want to just check with the town board if you're still in favor with opening these 3 bathing beaches on the bay this upcoming Saturday full time.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will let them know that, and we'll make sure we'll get all the appropriate signage and our protocols in place. I already discussed the recommendations for gatherings on the beaches, up to 25 people, starting in phase 3. That would be for total participants, including staff and anyone that would be enjoying the day. I wanted to give everyone a little update on 3 municipal projects that we're doing. First of all is Head of the Harbor bulkhead repair project, which has been slightly delayed based on COVID. is almost 90% complete right now. Today, today they're finishing up with the deck installation there. They are going to be installing the power posts, are starting to be installed today. The hydro seeding is going in on Monday, and per our engineer, he states that it should be complete and ready to go by July 1st. So Carol, I think we'll talk a little bit later also about this. The one question is about some of the benching out there. I would like to maybe see if we can get the teak benches based on what, some new teak benches based on what the permit is, but it's looking good. I pass by it almost every day for a good glimpse of the water. Secondly, the second house restoration project has restarted again. The contractor has been contacted. They have done their affirmation from the state and also sent to the town all their COVID safety plans. Based on Bob Hefner, who is assisting our overview of that. At second house, all structural work is complete. 90% of the roof shingling and exterior trims are breeze boards, corner boards, rake boards are installed, and the porch work has begun. The frame is nearly complete. I haven't seen that. I look forward to seeing it. Milling of the porch is ongoing, and the windows have actually been sourced and also delivered where they are being painted off the site, and they will be in about 2 weeks transferred to the second house. And it seems like very shortly, knowing how construction projects go, Peter knows as well, that we might be seeing the exterior of second house come back to its former glory. Also, I'd like to let the board know that the burial ground preservation group has contacted me. They have given their COVID safety plans to us, and they're scheduling to do the Hedges Parsons burial ground restoration work, which is on Old Stone Highway, for the week of July 6th to 10th, weather dependent. We look forward to continuing that initiative. In sanitation, everyone knows, I would like to keep letting everyone know that sanitation permits are due on the 15th. Please contact the clerk's office, come to our drop box here, or mail it in to Town Hall or also to the sanitation department to get your permits. Buildings and grounds has been also busy recently. They've been extremely busy helping me with signage and other actions, but they've also restriped the areas of Napeag Lane and also Atlantic Avenue recently, even today, just Napeag Lane as we were speaking. This is actually to try to make sure that all the parking lots are better accessible by the public, but also socially distanced then too. So I thank Tony Littman for assisting in that. We do have a recommendation from discussion about our recreation department. John Rooney, the head of recreation, has met with myself and other individuals in his department, including their assistant recreational leaders, Chief Lifeguard John Ryan, and other recreational aides to discuss the recreational program in the light of COVID-19. Typically, we run programs that would be indoor programs during the summertime in multiple locations. We run our junior lifeguarding program. We also run swimming clinics. We run basketball clinics. We also run sailing. We do a lot of yoga also. The recommendations right now from the recreation department is not to use any indoor facilities for any programs or clinics for this calendar summer right now. We do know that might affect many individuals or many families and their children. So I wanted to give them as much notice as possible that we don't believe that we could do that in a safe way with the numbers based on our internal facilities right now. We do have protocols that I would like to pass around to the board that would allow for certain outdoor activities such as sailing to move forward, tennis clinics to move forward. We would look into limiting and restricting certain actions of our junior lifeguarding program. Johnny Ryan Jr., Pucci, and others have come up with great protocols to limit exposure, also to limit capacity on them. And they're also looking into potentially do our swimming program. So I'll move that forward. It's something I can support based on seeing these protocols in place. We would not want to do any of this until after July 6th, as per the governor's guidance right now. And we will adapt and change anything based on any upcoming guidance for low-risk activities. But it's something I think that I want to just put it on the board's radar and also parents' radars as we try to plan for our summers of either programming, childcare, beach activities, or just business in general then too. So those are some of the recommendations. I can get around, and I'm willing to answer any questions.
I have a question. What about the summer rec program that we run at Spring School and at Montauk School? Is that something you're looking to move forward with, or not this year?
Those would be the two programs that we would not be looking to move forward with this summer because of their dependency on internal spaces right now that we don't necessarily feel are going to be as would allow for the social distance that the staff thinks is appropriate. I'll be honest, I've never sat in one of those programs or clinics for the crafts and games, but I'm listening to the professionals that do this for the town, our rec leaders and our recreation aides, to say they just don't see how it's going to be possible to do this within what current guidance is right now. So that's why I wanted to get this out there as soon as possible right now.
And that's also indoor, also like the open gym that we used to have at the Montauk Playhouse. And
Montauk Playhouse is still currently closed right now to the public, except for the essential business of the child care right now. But yes, that's exactly right. Based on our current guidance that we have, we think that this is the most appropriate recommendations that we would have for the town board.
So we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, and I can respect that, David. I honestly, I feel for the working families in this community, because our summer recreation programs are the most affordable programs for families in the town. So, it's just one more struggle, for working families at this time.
I completely agree with you, Kathy, and that's why we wanted to try to get this out there as soon as possible, so people can potentially plan in advance right now, and we would know how to answer their questions. As a working father myself, I understand how difficult it can be, particularly when you go into a summer season right now. So I do feel for that. We just also have, we put our public safety as far as our COVID protocols. We looked at it all right now, and that's just the recommendations we have.
Right. So at this time, that's our position, but we'll continue to monitor progress and see how it goes. And if we can offer additional programs later on, we will do our best to make sure that happens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Sylvia?
Yeah. So the Business Recovery Group has met several times over the past week. And I really want to thank the Planning Department, Peter, yourself, Vanskoyak, the Fire Marshal's Office, Code Enforcement, and the Attorney's Office for putting together and making sure that the application for outdoor dining is complete, that we tried to cross all T's and dot all I's. There were sometimes a few glitches that we found as we moved along. There also are applications for SLA and acknowledgments that the businesses are serving alcohol outdoors. Also working, and thank Peter again for getting the right-of-way for Highway 27 to be able to be used by restaurants and businesses if they want to start to put merchandise in a very limited way outside. So we've been working on these things with the help of these departments, and really want to thank them for all of the work that they've been doing. And I'll ask them about caterers tomorrow in our meeting. We also looked at the Montauk maps, changing one of those. We saw it last at our last work session, changing the maps. One of them in Montauk was for a one-way street on Elmwood, and then another one-way street on, not Edison, anyway, to try to make that loop. And we're also considering closing down kind of the circle area for Montauk one day a week. And those maps, Peter, did you get those separated out so we could see?
Yeah, I do the separate maps. I'm waiting for the one combined map. I think Barnaby had broken it out just into the one-way streets that would change.
Okay.
For clarity's sake, and then a separate map showing how Main Street would be closed down during that 1 day a week, provided we get permission to do so. And then a combined map. I don't have the combined map yet, I don't think, but I'll certainly be forwarding the other two, and with the third to follow shortly.
Yeah, and so those maps, also the Montauk CAC, we wanted to get the word out to Montauk what that effort looked like and see if they had any questions or suggestions as we move forward with it. So that special meeting of the Montauk CAC is going to happen tomorrow at 5:30. And if you can get the maps to me ahead of time, I'll go ahead and distribute them.
I'll send them to you right now.
Oh, okay. That would
I
be
have the 2, like I said, but I got to check with Barnaby on the 3rd.
okay. So as you see, we're continuing to work with, trying to do different ideas during this COVID epidemic so that businesses can get up and running and do it in a safe and consistent manner for everyone that's involved. Art Apart. So the East Hampton Arts Council is working on Art Apart, and their drive-by art show is coming up on Saturday. It is from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and they have over 40 artists already that are on the map. And if you want to go and see the website, it's at artapart2020.wixsite, wixsite.com/2020. So they used there was a free website service for them to put the map together and for them to also give instructions on what's expected of those that participate. Hope I said it was from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It looks like this weekend's going to be a good weekend weather-wise, so it should happen on Saturday. So the artists are ranging from locations from Montauk all the way out to Cedar Point, Springs, Amagansett, and other parts of East Hampton. So the addresses will be sent to the police department in the next day or so that they know where all of this is taking place. The Anti-Bias Task Force also met via Zoom. And there was a lot of interest in trying to move, as everyone that goes into town hall sees it's as we walked away from the bumper sticker contest that was there, all of them are still up. And they would like to complete that task. So yesterday we had the boards moved outside for 2 hours so that people could come by, particularly members of the Anti-Bias Task Force, and bring family members if they so chose to be able to vote on the bumper stickers. We think it's important now more than ever to have children participate in activities like this, and we're anxious to choose the winners in the different age groups and then choose an overall winner, which will get a $100 gift certificate at TJ Maxx, and then an overall will get $200 from TJ Maxx. So members are also writing letters to the editor and talking about their personal experiences with what they're seeing in America today and how they have witnessed and felt racism in their own lives. Some of the letters I find almost bringing me to tears, so they're really poignant. So letters were in this last week, and more letters will be in this week from members of the Anti-Bias Task Force. And I thank them for taking the time to put these letters and their thoughts and their feelings on paper for everyone to see. The Energy Sustainability Committee also met yesterday. There was a post, an email that went out last week. NYSERDA had put up $20 million for 0% financing for solar and energy efficiency. And within a week, that $20 million was gone. So within 2 weeks, that $20 million was gone. We got the email blast out to over 1,100 people who had signed up for Energize East Hampton. And there were 8 people that signed up for solar and 4 people that signed up for energy efficiency needs, which is basically things like new windows, insulation that they would want for their house to be more energy efficient. So I want to thank Lauren Steinberg for getting that email blast out to everybody, because it really was helpful. And we hope that NYSERDA will come up with more money for this kind of solar event and energy efficiency that we're all looking for. In 2016, we became a climate smart community, and we achieved the bronze level. And to continue, we need to be recertified. And we need to do that recertification by 2021. And that means we have to resubmit and update all of the things that we've been doing towards being a climate smart community. And we're hoping now to reach a silver level, but it's going to take, it's a pretty long process, and it takes a while to get everything looked at so that we can see, where we stand. And we have to fill out a lot of forms and do a lot of metrics so that we can come in at hopefully a higher level. The group is anxious to move the CCA along, and we'll hope that if there is any delay, and they understand there's a second hearing that's coming up, but they hope that that delay is not going to be too much longer, because they think it's really important for us to move into the CCA realm in order to meet our goals of 100% electric renewable, which was to be 2020, and we didn't meet that goal. So we're hoping that we will, continue to work towards that goal before 2030. They also discussed a climate emergency declaration. They'd like to research this a little bit more, but there are over 1,300 municipalities, from cities like Boston to resorts that are more like ours, like Aspen, Colorado, who have declared an emergency, a climate emergency. It is something that they would like East Hampton Town Board to consider, with more specificity coming at a later date, what the one for East Hampton might look like. And I just want to give you some information that came in yesterday. 2 days ago, the Arctic Circle reached 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Globally, May was the warmest May on record. And in the last 12 months, we also reached the hottest on record. So our belief as the Energy Sustainability Committee is that we are in a climate emergency. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Sylvia. I have
Can
to
I ask?
agree.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kathy. You wanted to...
I just had a question for David. David, comfort stations. What are the hours going to be? Because that will play into catered events. Typically, people pick a beach because it has a comfort station. But if we're closing our comfort stations early to get cleaning crews and whatnot in there, that would probably have an impact.
Currently, our comfort stations are going to be opened only during lifeguarded hours right now. We are hiring custodial staff. There will be resolutions on Thursday. Their training will be starting this weekend. I believe by phase 3, we could implement our priority list to potentially extend the hours for our comfort stations in the hamlet areas, also in the back, or also at our guarded beaches. I would like just to confirm that with buildings and grounds first, and then I can send around what a priority list might be for our bathrooms of where to open, how long to open them for, or close. But I think that's going to be something that we will be able to feasibly do safely based on our new hires. I just can't say that yet until I talk to that department head.
And right now, what are the hours?
Right now, the hours are 9 to 5.
Okay, thank you.
And they're going to be at our ocean guarded beaches, and they're also going to be at our bay guarded beaches starting Saturday, and then also in our 2 downtown areas, hamlet areas. The comfort stations are the Amagansett parking lot, and then also behind the Montauk police station, substation in Montauk near the Hampton Jitney stop.
And what are the hours for those?
9 to 5 also.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're talking about expanding the hours on the public restrooms in the hamlet centers, though.
Right.
Correct.
So that'll start soon.
And then my other question is, did we determine our first Thursday meeting in July, whether on July 2nd, and whether that's going to be 11 a.m. or 2 p.m.?
We did not. I don't think we heard back from LTV on that, but we'll follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
So, Sylvia, are you finished with your liaison report then?
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. Jeff?
The Airport Management Advisory Committee met this week and this past week. And Jim Brundage reported the not surprising news that airport traffic is generally down and at the moment seems to mostly consist of based aircraft, which means that a lot of the larger jets are using the airport now. A lot of those are based aircraft. I think the town board is aware that Hertz is now in bankruptcy, so we're losing some money from Hertz because they're not paying until they work their way through bankruptcy. And we were talking a little bit about, what kind of cost hits the airport might take. It's a little unclear at this point. I don't think Jim has definitive figures because it's too early, but leases make up about 19% of our income. Landing fees are much more significant. They make up about half of the budget of the airport. He's a little concerned, I think, because landings affect the parking lot, advertising, and fuel sales as well. But it remains to be seen how the season will look. He did mention that there was some interest among advertisers for wine sales and wanted to get some kind of a read from the town board on how we felt about taking ads for wine sales. So I put that out on the table. If there's any comment on that, does anybody have a strong feeling pro or con?
Is there a request to advertise alcohol, primarily wine?
Wine, yeah. He said wine. Yeah. I think he'd like to.
And that would be the interior of the terminal building? Yeah. Put up a poster or something?
Yeah.
Advertising wine?
Through Upfront Media, I guess, is the entity that manages or so.
I think it's pretty innocuous, but my only consideration would be that if you're allowed for wine, how can we not do it out of non-prejudice for other, alcoholic beverage, manufacturers? That's my concern on that.
We have approval of the creative, is my understanding, because when I was liaison, I saw we had to approve every ad before it went up. So because it's not just because it could be something that's pretty innocuous, but the visual could be,
right,
quite salacious. So I personally don't have an issue with. We've got jewelry and whatever, watches and things. I don't have an issue with wine being advertised out front. But I do have a question, Jeff, as far as we're still, I guess, looking to see the 2019 review of operations and complaints.
Yes.
We haven't seen that. And then I was wondering if we could do that in July, and it would also be if you could share the information you have about operations being down, and maybe at the third work session in July, we could get a report just preliminarily on a comparison of Memorial Day and 4th of July, 2020 versus 2019.
Yeah, that timing should be fine, actually. I've been in touch with Adam at, was it HMMH, on the 2019, and in fact, just a couple days ago, and I'm just waiting for a response. I was thinking of bringing it in that's at the soonest moment I can, actually, because right now is about the timing that we were talking about. Mid-June is what we were talking about to finish up.
Well, normally it's done after the close of the season, sometime between the end of the season and prior to the start of the following season is when we've normally done that, usually no later than January or February. But, as soon as we can get that, I think that's helpful for people who want to know what the data looked like for last year. And again, I think it's helpful, given where we are, just have a comparison. Yep. See what effects COVID have had on the airport as well. I think we all agree that airport traffic has dramatically dropped off since the pandemic started, although I suppose it's probably starting back up again now.
Yeah, I'm getting some. So.
Yeah, which leads me to my question for you, Jeff. I know that there was discussion about in the fly neighborly to have the twin heavy helicopters, which are the largest class of helicopter, transit around Plum Island and then come in over Cedar Point Northwest Harbor to enter and exit airspace on the Echo route. Can you tell me if that's actually been put into place?
Yeah, I believe it is. I believe it is. In fact, we had a little discussion about, we had a caller complain about helicopter noise from one of the larger helicopters. And interestingly, Jeff Smith was in on the meeting and he said, I was flying that helicopter that you're.
How high was he flying it? Because I think I've gotten some complaints that those twin heavies are not really adhering to the fly neighborly altitudes that were anticipated.
He was flying at a couple thousand feet, I think, basically, but he still got a complaint about it. But I can check in with.
I had another complaint this morning, and that's why I asked. And the person complaining said that it was actually had two complaints, saying that perfectly blue, clear skies. Why are they flying this low? With the largest helicopters that enter the airspace. So
yeah, I can check in with
maybe check with Jim and see what kind of activity there was this morning.
I will do
so
that.
We can get an idea on what the altitudes were.
That was this morning. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, there are a fair amount of complaints still that we're hearing, both at the meeting and online. And I think that's because it's largely now jets. And I think, what Jim was saying is it's because a lot of the larger jets are based aircraft out here. And that's what's in the air.
Are they tie down seasonal basing out here? Because there aren't that many jets at the airport.
His comment was that a lot of the jet owners are based here and came here in early March. And that's why you hear a lot more jets flying. That was his comment from the meeting.
Okay, so they moved their jet perhaps to be based here. That would be helpful if we had a breakdown of what kind of equipment is actually based here and what isn't, what's seasonal, what's just come here and they're parked for a while. I mean, I have no idea.
I'll circle back to him, but that was his comment. I have it written down that a lot of the larger jets are based here, and the cabin class helicopters, which are the larger helicopters, are now out here. And he said June is starting to pick up in terms of traffic. So I'll circle back. I'll talk to Jim about that and circle back. The committee was also talking about reviewing the minimum standards for FBO operators. They still want to take a look at it. And the suggestion was, rather than get bogged down in pricing somebody that, there are companies that design minimum standards, that they might just look up some standards that are online for airports that are comparable to East Hampton. There were a couple mentions of Aspen and Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, but they actually have some differences. Apparently, mostly because they have commercial services. I think it was Steve Tuma or Jim may have suggested that we look at Lake Tahoe, which he said is much more comparable to East Hampton. There was still some discussion about, planting near the fences. I told them that we had talked about that briefly, near the deer fences. The deer fence, as you know, was damaged when a plane overshot the runway. It's now fixed. They were wondering, if the repairs could be made any more quickly. I checked in with Len Bernard about it, and his answer was, well, if we picked a contractor that was already in use with the town, it could go more quickly. So I'll have to circle back to Jim on that. The interesting news is that he, at least anecdotally, felt that the fences are working, because when the fence was down, they had more deer intrusion. So he noticed it. So it looks like they are working. We spent some time talking about automatic dependent surveillance broadcast radar, ADSB, which is which is an information sharing system that relies on satellite surveillance and is more accurate and covers a wider area than we get right now with Vector. And Jim indicated that the company, one of the major companies offering that, is developing programs for smaller airports like East Hampton, and he's going to embark on having a discussion with them. Regardless of how you feel about the airport, it is a more accurate program. It covers about 40 square miles instead of 10 square miles, and it reaches all the way to the ground instead of 200 feet above the ground. So he's going to look into that. As I said, there are still major noise impacts coming in, even with the attempt to create an all-water route. We're hearing from people in Noyak who are still pretty seriously affected by noise. So unfortunately, it seems to prove the point that changing the routing really just shuffles around who gets impacted. It's a question of moving harmful impacts in the sky, and is not the answer. There are, yeah, I mean, we had a couple of people at the meeting that said this all-water route may be good for East Hampton, but it's not good for, Noyak, Shelter Island, and those communities in that vicinity. There were some suggestions that was deliberately skewed to protect some of the more glamorous communities in East Hampton, at which point Arthur Malman piped up and said, I'm living in one of them, not that I'm a glamorous guy, but it's, we get airport noise too over in Georgia. So, and Jeff Smith, as his usual stance, and I don't question it, says that, reports that the Fly Neighborly plan is pretty effective. But he said, the airport's landlocked, and at some point you got to make a turn and go over land, and when that happens, it causes problems. It's small comfort, but I'm glad that Jeff was at the meeting. And actually, Kathy, there was some talk about comparing weekend traffic on Memorial Day this year to last year, and actually comparing maybe a week long's worth of air traffic this year as opposed to last year to get some kind of a better.
Might be worthwhile year to date.
I'd like to see 4th of July too.
Yeah, I think year to date would be helpful.
4th of July and year to date. Okay. And year to date. And I don't. Yeah, I actually have that down in my notes to collect data comparing the July 4th weekends, and I think that's really about all I had from the AMAC committee.
Jeff, you had mentioned you were going to find a spot on the town website to put the transcripts of our public hearings. Did you?
The transcripts.
Remember we had a conversation that we had to post it. We were discussing where we were going to post the transcripts of our public hearings, and you volunteered to find a spot on the town website where they could go. I would imagine that we've had public hearings that are ready to be posted.
No, I think the discussion was where they would be posted. It wasn't that I was going to set something up. I said it might be a good idea to have a separate, location on the website.
Right.
I like Kathy thought you were following up on.
Yeah, you were going to tell us where it would make the most sense on the website.
That you would work.
No, that's not correct. And in fact,
so you weren't going to help out.
That's what my notes say.
Carol's on with us now, and what happened is Carol said she spoke up and said we have a location where you can go if you're interested in like the planning board or the ARB. We have a location where we're posting the meeting minutes, so you do not have to go and set up a new location. That's the discussion we had.
Okay, does one of the other board members want to follow up?
I thought there was a difference between Carol's minutes that she's doing, and the transcripts. Because Carol's minutes are at 30,000 feet, more or less. The transcripts
Okay,
are.
so do we have a board member who's willing to follow up on that and make sure that that gets done so we get that out for the public? David?
I'm happy to talk to Carol, Peter. I'm merely correcting your innuendo that I haven't done something.
I'm not making innuendo. I was at the meeting. I thought you were saying that you would take up that effort to make sure it got
my
done.
recollection was
instead of just making recommendations, that you would follow through with it for us and get something done.
Yes, Peter, I get your point.
So do you want to do it or not?
I'm perfectly happy to talk to Carol.
Okay, so you're gonna follow through and make sure.
If you're gonna ask me a question, really, please just let me answer. All right, then you can talk and we can have a civil discussion here. I'm perfectly happy to follow up on that with Carol as to where on the website she thinks the best place is for the minutes from the hearings. But when we last spoke, I believed that she had resolved that issue right in the meeting and that there was no follow-up. And I have my notes too.
Okay, so the result of this conversation is you are going to follow up to make sure that
I'll follow up with Carol and talk about it with Carol.
That the transcripts get posted.
Yeah, I'll follow up.
That they're prepared, and I guess you'd have to check with the attorney's office to see that the transcripts are actually prepared.
Well, I saw
because we're closing. Hold on, just let me finish, please. So once they're posted, once they're officially posted, we timed the closure of the public hearings that we've had to date to 2 weeks after the public posting of those transcripts. So we obviously can't close any of those hearings till that's done. So I need somebody who can follow up on the posting and to make sure that the notification goes out so that we know when we can close those hearings and vote on them. So are you willing to do that?
Yes, I am. I saw that
great.
email just
Great, thank you.
in, and we
Thanks,
also were discussing at one time who was going to be doing the transcripts. And I think at one point Carol had said, there's a company that we can pay to do it. And then we switched and said, we've got it.
So again, we need somebody on the town board who's willing to step up and follow through to make sure that we figure out how these transcripts are being prepared, who's doing it, if it requires cost, how we're going to pay for it, and see that they get posted. That's essentially what we thought we had resolved, but I don't know. Maybe we did.
I wasn't in on the decision about which company was going to actually do the transcripts. I participated with Carol on the discussion.
Okay. Well, do you understand where we are now with the transcripts? Okay. All right. So we'll rely and count on you.
Where they were going to be posted.
Okay. We can rely and count on you to get that done. Thank you. Appreciate that. So is that it for your liaison report, Jeff?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Thank you. So as was previously stated, the Business Recovery Committee has had a number of meetings. We did work very hard on kind of short notice to prepare the application for outdoor dining, which we discussed at last week's Tuesday meeting. And on Wednesday, that application was finalized and circulated the same day that the governor's restrictions against outdoor dining were lifted. In that one day, I think the fire marshal turned around at least a dozen applications and did inspections to allow businesses to immediately open. There were several questions that came up as a result, and it's hard to foresee, every particular repercussion or change, the law of unintended consequences. But so there was some additional clarification that was required, not a great deal, but we then followed up with businesses so that they could understand what the rules were. One of the confusions among restaurateurs was the fact that some establishments already had outdoor dining areas, and whether or not they would even have to file an application because they were pre-approved for outdoor dining. And we instructed them that, in fact, that they did need to apply because it would still require the fire marshal signing off that this public safety, health protocols as well as any change of seating plan for fire safety would have to be reviewed by the fire marshal, which he worked very hard to turn those questions around. It's a no-fee application, and we have been turning those around very quickly. There are a number of other issues surrounding the expansion of outdoor dining on private property within the premises, which it's currently approved. And one of those issues is that the SLA has a process for expanding the sale and consumption of alcohol on a premises. And that differs again from portions of a municipal right-of-way or municipal property. And so there are a number of different steps that need to be taken depending on what the restaurant's proposing. The state guidelines for use of public right-of-way were still under discussion, and they were trying to refine that. I spoke with the Commissioner, Rich Cawson, of the New York Regional Director of New York State DOT last Thursday afternoon, and he explained to me that they were finalizing those guidelines. There was further approval required from the federal government because federal government gives money to the states in the form of federal highway funds, and that they were in the process of waiving their requirement that a lease agreement be put into place. Director Cawson said that he would get me those guidelines as soon as they were finalized by the state. The next morning at 9 a.m., I got a call from one of his staff members saying that they had just released and finalized those guidelines, which I then sent to our planning department, attorney's office, marshal, for everyone to review them and turn around an application with the state for the state right-of-ways to be used. We've turned that around in one day on Monday, thanks to the efforts of our planning director, Joanne Powell, and fire marshal's office, and again, Nancy Lynn Thiel from the attorney's office. It's kind of all hands on deck to try and get this process moved forward, because on municipal property, the SLA has another whole process that has to be followed, and requirements, a submission of an outdoor dining plan, et cetera, within the right of way. So they have different rules, regulations for that. So, we've been working with businesses to find out which businesses are interested in expanding out onto the sidewalks next to their establishment. There's also a provision where they could potentially get permission from an adjoining business to allow them to use space in front of that business. But in any case, we've been moving that forward, trying to help expedite that process. Again, there's a whole set of safety protocols that all of these businesses would have to abide by. And so that's moving forward. I got an update from Judge Tukolsky here about local court activity on the 12th, and apparently the arraignments that could only take place up island at Central ISOP, I believe, between the hours of 9 and 5, and in off hours, arraignments could be done here locally. That restriction's been lifted, and local arraignments can occur during regular business hours now as well. In addition, small claims can be made in person before the court. They do have been issuing, have the ability to issue search warrants when appropriate, and that comes before them. They've also expanded into vehicle and traffic law and are holding virtual, court sessions with attorneys, no clients present. That is an option, whether or not someone wants to go forward with that. And also now full virtual for a number of other activities with attorneys. And they can resume the town code violations again with attorneys present only. We had, let's see, we had we had a 2 o'clock conference call yesterday with New York State Governor's Office's representatives in conjunction with the State Liquor Authority representative and Department of Health representative. This is following comments that the governor made on Sunday at his press conference about businesses in the Hamptons not abiding by the rules, and that he was going to enforce things, shut things down if that didn't happen. We had that conference call, and the state was unable to cite a single episode within South Fork towns of any business not operating correctly. In addition to that, the East End Chiefs Association reviewed calls that came in over the weekend and also could not point to any instance that would substantiate the claims that the governor made. And he made a claim something about over 12,000 complaints were received. Now, I know they have an issue in New York City. He said New York City and the Hamptons. But I like to say the Hamptons is a mythical place that doesn't really exist. We're East Hampton, and we've been working very hard to inform the public and our business owners about the proper reopening protocols. We've dedicated a huge amount of resources, hiring folks with additional overtime to oversee that and work cooperatively to inform both the public and business owners how to reopen safely and what's expected. And we've gained actually very good compliance here. Additionally, we still have the lowest rate of infection of any town on Long Island, in the Long Island region, as well as the New York metro area, with the exception of Shelter Island, which is surrounded by a moat. I'm very proud of that. I think it speaks to the steps that the town took very early on to prevent the spread of the disease, and a very receptive public who followed that guidance very well. And that will continue, I believe. And I think it's important that people not drop their guard, that we can reopen. We've seen the numbers decline significantly, but we can't be complacent. We still need to be wearing our masks in public, avoiding time indoors close to others that are unrelated and from other households. When you go into the grocery store or the pharmacy or whatever it is, make sure you're wearing your masks. Most businesses here, the sign on the door reads, "No mask, no service." And I think that's appropriate. Business owners do have the ability to deny service to anyone who's not wearing a mask. And we have lots of staff members out and about reminding the public if they see instances where a queue for a takeout line or whatever is getting too crowded, too congested, and we've been gaining compliance. So, I'm very encouraged to see the direction and the progress we've made over these last several months. A lot of people have really sacrificed a great deal in order to get us to this point. We need to get those folks back to work as soon as possible and as safely as possible. We continue to encourage donations to our food pantries. Kathy and I were both involved with outdoor movie theater fundraiser that occurred over the weekend, Friday and Saturday night, at the Hampton's Classic grounds. That event, I think, has raised over $200,000 for Montauk Springs and East Hampton food pantries. Again, I think having a generous public step forward and contribute at a time like this to make sure that our food pantries remain fully funded is really important. This is going to be an ongoing need within our community until people really get back on their feet. We're looking at expanding the budgetary, the budget line for human services as that department continues to serve seniors and others in need, and we'll continue to raise and direct funds for our food pantries. We have 2 different COVID-19 sites within the town for testing. One is at Pantry Place, and that is provided by Hudson River Healthcare in conjunction with the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation. It's at 400 Pantry Place. You can go to the town website and find the number just by clicking COVID testing site. And that number will come up as well as the Montauk location, which is at the lower parking lot of the school. Again, both locations require advanced appointments being made. The East Hampton site is open Wednesdays and Fridays from 9 to 5, and in Montauk, Tuesdays and Thursdays, similar hours. Again, COVID testing is important to help us know who might be infected. You don't necessarily have to be symptomatic in order to carry this disease and spread it. So again, that's why it's important to maintain those safety protocols, wear a mask when close to others, wash your hands, disinfect commonly used surfaces. Those three things will help prevent the spread of this disease and help us get back to phase 3 and 4 reopenings as soon as possible. We're on track to do phase 3 by June 24th, and provided the numbers keep going in the correct direction, phase 4, which is the last phase in reopening, could occur as early as July 8th. So this is, again, very encouraging. We're going to continue to monitor the situation here in town. The beaches have been running quite smoothly, with the addition of our beach ambassadors, recreational staff members who are positioned at the parking lots to inform people they need to be wearing their masks when they're transiting the beach areas, exiting, entering, and until they get themselves socially distanced out on the beach. The governor now allows gatherings of up to 10 people. It's expected that will become 25 people on June 24th, provided, again, we continue to make progress. So it's all, to me, it's all very encouraging, and I thank our public for being so conscientious, respectful, and responsible at this time, and for having patience. These have been trying times for everyone, but I think we're doing great. That's pretty much it for my liaison report for today. Some of the other information I was going to cover was covered by previous board members. So at this point, we have a few resolutions.
Sure. Starting with 2020-611, it's to appoint part-time deputy town clerk Joy McGuire at an hourly rate of $25 retroactive to June 15th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried.
2020-612 is approval of Corey's Wave special event permit.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed and carried.
2020-613 is to approve the publication of an ad in the Express News Group papers for honoring healthcare heroes. The financial impact is $750, and it will come from the civil defense line.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
2020-614 is approval of the local youth organization East End Against Hate to hold a peaceful protest in Montauk on Friday, June 19th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. The route will start at the Lions Field soccer fields in Montauk, proceed along South Edgemere Street, circling around Carl Fisher Plaza. I know that this is it's a Friday in the summer in Montauk. So I will be reaching out to the Montauk Chamber of Commerce to get the word out to businesses in the area so that they're aware, because there will be street closures, but Montauk Precinct Commander Lieutenant Claflin has got a handle on that, and we'll communicate as much as we can to folks in Montauk.
So, you know, are they're circling the entire plaza, or does that mean they're going on Carl Fisher Place all the way around the north and south half of the circle and then back out? So they're going to march through and then go back to Lions Field where they will stop.
Yes, I'm not sure if they're going to do one loop around or two. I know there's going to be a time when the young people will get on the ground and count down the 8 minutes and 46 seconds. But Lieutenant Claflin was reaching out to Ashley Peters after I spoke to her yesterday to try to finalize the plans. So, you know, obviously the police department is cognizant of, you know, how the traffic and what roads are going to close. They actually had asked for a different route that would have been, you know, very problematic. This was a route that the chief felt that he could work with.
So the sooner we have that specific information as to the exact route and timing And
Yeah. So I mean,
how
that is
long
the
it'll
exact
occur.
route. I sent an email to Lieutenant Claflin to see if there was more information that he could give me so that I could relay that to the
Yeah,
Montauk.
I'm just curious in terms of timing on the
Yeah.
street closure and whatnot, just so people are aware of it, we can get that information out. I've already had an inquiry based on our conversation earlier today. I think it's fantastic. We have, you know, our young people exercising their constitutional rights. I think it's really encouraging to see another generation taking up, you know, the mantle of democracy, and I think that's so important for people to get involved and voice their opinions. That's how democracy works best. And again, you know, it's kind of getting to be time to pass the baton of civic involvement to a younger generation. You know, we have younger people. We want to encourage them to take up positions in government as well. Some of us are going to be aging out here before too long, and we like to see another generation come up behind us. So I think it's terrific. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed and carried.
I have resolution 2020-615. It's to appoint seasonal temporary or environmental aid Samir Johannes as part-time labor in the aquaculture department for an hourly rate of $19.95.
Second.
Retroactive June 15th.
Sorry, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed and carried.
I have resolution 2020-616 is a budget modification for highway. Budget mod is directed from $20,000 from subcontractor snow to other equipment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. It was nice not to have any snow this past week. One of the side benefits. Okay.
I move that we go into exec session for contract personnel and litigation. And it is now 2:51. What time would you like to reconvene?
3:20, 3:30, board's pleasure.
Could I have one of our outside counsels be first on the list? I think he's kind of anxious to
Sure.
do something else. I think only 10 minutes at the most, I think. Okay.
Oh,
3:20.
3:20 then?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
Good. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe, be well, be kind, be courteous, be patient.
All right. Thank you.